This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. It's tax season, and we're all a bit tired of numbers. But here's one you need to hear. $16.5 billion. That's how much the IRS flagged for possible identity fraud last year. Now here's a good number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it. Guaranteed. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Hello and welcome to History For Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie,
and we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird.
Welcome to a really special episode of History for Weirdos. We have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Peter Weller today. So he is a noted actor, director, and Italian Renaissance art historian. He is most known as the star of the iconic films RoboCop and RoboCop 2, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, and Naked Lunch. His more recent appearances include Star Trek Into Darkness, the TV series Dexter, which I love, and 24. In addition to his long career in theater, film, and television, Dr. Weller received his PhD in art history with a specialization in Italian Renaissance art from UCLA. Leon Battista Alberti in Exile is Peter Weller's first book. We really hope you enjoy this episode.
Yeah, you're good to go.
I want to ask you a question. So you're married?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Andrew and Stephanie are married.
Yesterday was our 8-year wedding anniversary.
Happy
I just told
anniversary.
him.
And
Thank you.
Now, I want to tell you something very interesting about
Yeah.
history since we're talking about history.
Yes.
Okay, there's a piece of art that is really, and I can't overspeak it. You can't oversay it. I mean, there's an art historian that came along in the last 5-10 years who said this piece of art is the one piece of art that you can't impugn. And everybody from Rembrandt to Leonardo to Michelangelo to Picasso to Rothko says source this piece of art. And it's by a guy named Giotto, Giotto.
Giotto.
Yeah, Giotto. And he does this chapel that's about 20 meters long
Okay.
called the Cappella Scrovegni. Scrovegni, like GN is pronounced like million in Italian.
Okay.
Like GL's the same way, yeah. Scrovegni, and that Cappella Scrovegni, or Scrovegni Chapel, or Arena Chapel, and the reason why they call it Arena Chapel in English, because it's right by an old Roman arena in Padova. And Padova is a beautiful city, the second oldest civic university. Because you got to remember that most universities are part of abbeys, like Oxford and Sorbonne and so forth. The oldest civic university, that means essentially licensed by a civilian, by Frederick Barbarossa, is Bologna. And it's in situ the oldest university in the world. The second one is Padua, because some of these teachers and students, Bologna is like 1170s, 80s. Padua is 1220s.
Okay.
Is that old enough for you? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Dig. So Padua is a very culturally sophisticated place, and it's part of my book.
Okay.
In this particular town, there's some astounding, game-changing art that the art historians and the artists themselves know about and celebrate, except that the art movers and shakers of tourism don't talk about it so much because, you know, Paris has the Louvre and Florence has the Ninja Turtles, and that's all you want to know. And that's basically it. But in this particular city of Padua, one of maybe my favorite places to go, and it's only, like I say, 10 minutes by train out of Venice, is this Cappella Scrovegni. And in it is a 20-meter long, unbelievably a preponderance of gift in a narrative of the story of Mary and Jesus in a movie.
Oh,
in fresco
cool.
that goes around the room. Okay, it was started around 1302 and it's finished in 1305 on March the 25th. So yesterday was
Oh, my God.
You brought it back to our
the
anniversary.
720th anniversary of the most important piece of Western art known. And by the way, not my opinion. Opinion of a whole lot of people. From Carlo Carrà, the guy who invented Cubism, to Picasso, to Rothko, to on and on and on it goes. Okay? Two great cinematographers now, it doesn't matter. I was sent there by a cinematographer. So on your anniversary, you also got the Cappella Scrovegni. So your homework is to go see Giotto. And people are listening to this, if they hear this.
Yeah.
A lot of people know who Giotto is. And they go, of course, it's Giotto. Okay. Yours truly?
Yeah.
I thought I was a smarty pants. I did not know who Giotto was.
It's okay. I just found out who he was right now.
Yeah,
yeah, but
you're
you
teaching
didn't
us.
pretend. You weren't like the pretenzioso.
No, not at all.
definitely not.
Okay, listen. The person that schooled me in art was the most beautiful, intelligent, gorgeous, wonderful friend to this day, Ally McGraw, who was a big-time movie star.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Big-time movie star model in the
Yes.
60s and 70s, whatever. And Ally still looks like she's like 28. I hate her for her looks, man.
Yeah.
Like, yoga every day and Pilates.
Yeah,
and whatever,
she is
man.
still beautiful.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
A room rocker, but speaks 5 languages and smart. So I did a movie with her, and then after the movie, she asked me to go see Sweeney Todd
Okay.
a week after it was open. So I went to see
Very
Sweeney
cool.
Todd
Very cool, yeah.
on St. Patrick's Day. And St. Patrick's Day was just a couple of weeks ago, so we always talk on St. Patrick's Day. And her birthday's on April Fool's Day. How about that? She is a class act. So she took me to the, and I was speaking with, can I bring up another podcast for fun?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, of
of
course.
course.
Okay, so yesterday I was
Yeah.
on with Mark Maron on his thing. Right?
Okay, yes.
Okay, he actually got to see this exhibition because in the 80s, there's a famous Picasso, huge painting called the Guernica. And the Guernica was a sort of a sad celebration of the bombing of a village where Franco had called in Nazi help from Germany to, this village was in rebellion against Franco. And the Nazis bombed it, and Picasso did this homage to its death called the Guernica, and he didn't want it in Spain, so they kept it at the Museum of Modern Art, and he said if Spain ever gets in short order, Spain ever gets a social democracy, please give it back to Spain. Okay. Franco dies, then there's a big hoon in the late 70s, and Juan Carlos, the king, who, for whatever his later life sins were, I think is a hero because he went in and basically said, this is a social democracy, people, and all you Guardia Civil guys got to get the F out, right? And so Picasso, it was returned. But before it was returned, MoMA, Museum of Modern Art, had a 5-floor exhibition of the biggest exhibit of Picasso, known. And, so Allie said, you got to go. And Allie and I are hanging out then. Allie's friends are not movie stars and not model around that. She was a stylist, for a stylist is like the person who sets up the situation for photo shoots.
I didn't know that.
For Sikorsky, for Vogue, whatever. She's chosen by Diana Vreeland of Vogue as a Girl of the Year.
Wow.
So was Sylvia Plath, great poet.
I love Sylvia Plath.
Diana Vreeland would go walk around his Ivy League schools and pick some chick and say, hey, okay, I'm going to groom you, as a sophisticata. And so Allie was one of those. And so Allie's knowledge of language, of art, whatever, now she's very humble, but she talks a mile a minute, and she is incredibly good looking, and she is, you're hard-pressed to find a smarter dinner companion. And I would go to these dinners with her, man. I'd be sitting next to Martha Graham. What the hell am I going to say to Martha Graham? I take dance. Yeah. Hey, Miss Graham. Yeah, I've gotten on the floor and done your exercises, Alvin Ailey. I'm sitting next to George Plimpton. I'm sitting next to Truman Capote. I'm sitting and Warhol.
Wow.
Those are her pals, So, and I say this over and over again because my mother is spent a lot of time in New York and she was loud. But she had read in the page 3 of the Post, hey, see, you're hanging out with Ally McGraw. What's that like? I said, it's kind of fun, Mom, but I feel like a real dummy. She says, why? I said, because I go to these things and we're talking to Calvin Klein about like skirt design and, I meet Gore Vidal, who later became a great friend. He's talking about this, like, the theories of education that are folding. I can't follow it. And she says, so? My mom said, well, I feel like the caboose at the end of the train. She goes, okay. I said, yeah, but I got nothing to say. My mom says, oh, don't say anything. Just shut up and listen. I go, duh. If you're with some smart people, But my thing is, my ego always wants to intersect.
Of course.
You were talking about his, history. I want to throw it in.
Yeah.
So Allie
Absolutely.
takes me this Picasso thing. I don't want to go to Curly Q's and look at no, this guy's a figurative realist.
Yeah.
You start in the basement when he's 12 years old. And then he's like, he paints unbelievably, he draws. It's not like a guy just started off doing the Guernica with abstract impressionistic horses being blown up.
Yeah.
The guy's a realist, then the guy's a cubist, then the guy's an abstractionist, then abstract impressionist.
true.
The guy goes all the way through it. I go, okay, where do I start? She says, okay, pick up a book on impressionism, Monet, Manet. Those are the easy guys to do. So I do that. I study forward, Cezanne. I go through all these guys I like. Then you start going backwards. You end up at the Renaissance, man, and you don't know what the Renaissance is, brother. That's some history. This is history for weirdos.
Yeah.
You get back to the Renaissance. This ain't just the Ninja Turtles.
No?
No.
No. This is war, politics, taxes. This is accounting. This is intellectual history. This is humanism. It's the rebirth of Cicero, Marshall. That's the rebirth of science. And you go, I don't want to read this shit. I know.
Obviously you did, though.
But you did.
No, but I was embarrassed into it, man, because of your anniversary.
Oh.
This is bring us around.
We're all coming back.
Man, I know Rauschenberg. I've had a beer with him. I know Warhol. He's taken my picture 8 times. I'm greased lightning with hanging out in New York, man.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm at the International Film Festival of Japan with I was telling Mark this with the great Jean Moreau and Truffaut's actress and the great Mike Medavoy, producer extraordinaire, born in Shanghai, no less, and Vittorio Storaro. And I was telling several people there, I got to remind people that Vittorio Storaro is, if I say films to you like The Last Emperor, Sheltering Sky, Apocalypse Now, Dick Tracy, Last Tango in Paris, the first guy to filter Technicolor. I was allowed to filter Technicolor because Technicolor, it was the mafia. You had to do your 3-bath thing, and they checked your movie, and if they liked it, fine. If they didn't, no good. Well, they sold a lab to Rome, and Dario Argento, the great expressionist horror film, does a couple of films with Vittorio, and they're off and running. And Vittorio's a game changer with cinematography. He's a game changer with color. And he's born on my birthday, I'm happy to say. 10
Really?
years. He's 10 years older than me.
When is your birthday?
June 24th.
Okay.
Ta-da.
It's
But
coming up.
Not March 25th.
Not March 25th.
No, not that lucky. I'm not as lucky as you guys, but June 24th. And so anyway, Vittorio always wears Versace. And
good taste.
It's just so great that Francis Coppola, who's celebrating a big picture thing at the Academy Museum and AFI, and is a great dude. I don't know him well, but he's such a great dude. But Coppola said that Vittorio Storaro is the only guy who could spend 2 years in the jungles of the Philippines in a white suit.
Oh my God.
And that's how
That's
elegant
insane.
Vittorio is, man.
Really?
Wow.
Vittorio is elegante.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and he is, an artist, a designer, a cinematographer, all sorts of stuff. So I asked him, because I'm like Mr. Pretentious, I'm at this film festival in Kyoto, and I've had Kobe beef for the Japanese. I guess people will watashi wa nihongo. And so I say, and I speak in French and some Italian. And,
oh, wow.
well, that's because of Allie. As, Allie got me with a French teacher, and I learned Italian. And
How many languages do you speak then?
5, not bad.
That's
I
incredible.
speak Japanese if I can go over there and pick it up again. And start.
Yeah.
But, by the way, I never started until I was 40. And so everybody
Really?
says, I wish I learned. You know what? It's easy. And Allie gave me the thing. I'm going to digress and tell you.
Okay.
You take the lesson every week.
Yeah.
You get a kid from a school, from undergrad program at UCLA, USC, whatever, man. So you got to pay him $75 a week, or $50 a week or whatever the heck it is, right? But you don't miss the lesson, whether you've done the homework or not. You got to hear that language every week. That's what she said. Don't miss the lesson. And if you have to go abroad, take your little stupid book, right? And go, excusez-moi, je voudrais le verre d'eau, la, 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 la. Right? Raise your hand and second thing is you got to make an ass out of yourself. You have to be willing to make an ass out of yourself. You have to
so
be
true.
willing to be, because Casey's got a 2-year-old, 4-year-old. You got to be the 2-year-old. Going, Mama, scusi, I want
That
la
is
la.
how kids learn.
Yeah, that's exactly. And that's how you learn a language.
Yeah.
But most adults don't want to be that idiot, right?
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, you go to France and do that, which I did. I go, excusez-moi. Je voudrais, and the waiter would go, "Oh my God, man!"
Yes.
and walk off. In
Yes.
Paris,
Especially in Paris,
yeah, especially in Paris. And south of France, they're a little more tolerant.
Yes,
and west
more
of France,
patient.
but Paris, man,
No.
Paris has gotten better. I got to say, in all
Oh,
difference of
really?
Paris. Yeah,
That's
because
good.
they had a meeting. They had to come to Jesus meeting. Really, they did. The culture administration had a, about the waiters, because the waiters used to be friendly.
Yeah.
Back in the days of Max Ernst, c'est ma vie heureux comme le garçon de Paris. My life has been as happy as the waiters on the streets of Paris. Not in the 60s and 70s, bro. No. So now they're nicer.
Okay.
Okay. So, but if you go to Italy, and I knew French before I knew Italian, and you go scusi, voglio, and you get the waiter goes, momento, you stop, Giuseppe, vieni qua, and then all of the whole
Come here,
kitchen
come
is
here.
invited on, man, and they say,
To watch you?
yeah, there's encore, and then you feel like a total jerk. Like, wait a minute, no, it's good, no, you do it again.
Oh my God.
And they love it.
They're encouraging
But they're
you.
encouraging.
Totally.
Yeah.
They're not
Totally.
making fun of you.
No.
They're encouraging you. That's
Yeah.
good.
No, but Americans have a self-consciousness. We have
do.
this self-consciousness
Yes.
about we don't like to be embarrassed.
Yes.
You know,
And we feel entitled.
We are the ugly American. Come
Yeah.
on, that's what.
I know.
That's what.
I
You know,
Well-
we don't want to know who George Bernard Shaw is, or
yeah.
look at this painting and not know who John Singer Sargent came to Venice. Why? I don't care. I don't want to be the dummy. We don't want to be the dummy.
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
And also, we can be the dummy in groups, getting off a bus or a ship. But
we do that quite easily.
Yeah, but we don't want to be the dummy.
The
And what's-
single dummy.
Yeah.
the single dummy. You don't want to be historical dummy because Americans we're young. We're
Exactly.
infants, man. And we are, I'm saying that collectively because I was there. I was the guy. I was the guy in the store or the shop who would go, and a guy would say, do you want some help? No, I don't need any help. I get
Right.
I don't want to be talked down to. So
This
anyway,
is good for
Allie-
Andrew to hear, by the way, because I speak fluent Spanish. That was my first language.
Oh,
That's
we're
my
going to
goal.
bring this
Sí.
up.
Sí, estuve
Mi ma-
en México a tu edad.
¿Sí?
Oh, see?
Mi mamá es
Sí,
de México, por eso.
Debo practicar español.
Sí.
Porque cambiar la cabeza
Sí.
es un problema
Sí.
Mhm.
para mí.
Puede practicar
Después
conmigo.
dos días,
Sí,
sí,
es lo que
está
pasa.
bien.
Ujú.
Pero
Estando allí.
prima,
Yeah.
yo pienso en italiano, en francés, en todas
Yes.
otras lenguas.
Yes, and they're similar. When we go to Italy, I default on Spanish a lot. And they're very kind about
you
it.
can't do that
Yeah.
though, man. You gotta go.
I
you gotta-
know. I get
can't-
nervous and then I'm like, I lie and I'm like, I'm not American. I'm
It's not as
Mexican.
complicated. It's not as complicated as
No, and
Spanish.
it's so beautiful.
But anyway, the point of this the long-winded
Oh, yeah.
event is that I'm at this thing and I asked Vittorio Storaro who his favorite painter is, right? In Italian, of course.
Yes.
Chi è il favorito pittore tuo? And he says to me in English, he's just so condescending. He says, well, have you been? He says, first of all, who's yours? And I said, I like, at that time, everybody's favorite jam is you can bring it up, like Caravaggio, because Caravaggio's movie
That's
maker's
hers.
favorite.
I love
Movie
him.
maker, okay.
Yeah.
The thing is, that's a cliche.
Yeah.
But it's an honest cliche because he's the first guy to really change lighting and light from the sides of more than.
Plus, he was such a weirdo.
Plus, he's a violent dude.
Yes.
I have to give a paper on him at the Mediterranean Society in about 2 weeks. Cause,
Oh, really?
yeah. But the thing is that you go to Caravaggio, you can go to, Rembrandt derives out of him, and and then I go to I said, well, look, man, I told Vittorio, I said, really, if you want to ask that, really, my favorite of favorites might be Hans Hoffman, the New York school guy, or Larry Rivers, because I was deeply into the New York school guys. And he just nods his head, and he's like blowing me off. and he says, I say, who's yours? He says, look, have you been to Padua? I said, no, I've never been to Padua at this time, 1991 or 2, whatever that was. He says, you've been going to Italy for how long? I said, 10 years. He says, you've never been to Padua? I said, no. He says, you've never seen Giotto? I said, who? I said, Giotto. He says, Giotto. And Giotto in Padua. I said, okay. And so Medavoy knew who it was.
Okay.
Because Medavoy's school. Jean Moreau knew
Okay.
who it was.
Uh-huh.
because she's smart, right? And telling it. I didn't know who the F he was talking about. And he said the very first one, by 3-7 frames of narrative movie in depth, spatial height, width, depth, color, feeling, passion, tears. The first real attempt at spatial perspective in a narrative in a movie that goes around a 20-meter church in front of which is Giovanni Pisano. Do you know who he is?
No.
I go, no. He says, well, he's the first, him and his dad were the first realist medieval sculptors. We go to Siena. I go, yeah, once. He says, so you don't know Giotto and you don't know Pisano and you don't know. I said, no. I said, no. He says, then Peter, he takes his Versace scarf. If I could do an imitation of him, he flips it over his shoulder. And he goes, we cannot talk about art.
Oh my God.
What a
And
diva.
effing blows me. Diva. I chase the guy down to a corner. And
My
he wanders
gosh.
away. And I say, sei pretenzioso. You're pretentious, man. He goes, no, tu sei pretenziosissimo.
You're
Come
super
tutti
pretentious.
come tutti americani.
Uh-huh.
Che parlano del Michelangelo, la. To Rembrandt, and you can say Cy Twombly, you can say Jackson Pollock, you can drop, all of the New York school guys.
Yeah.
You can say Rothko. He says, but all of these people source Giotto. They all source Giotto. Picasso, all of them.
So you got another
Carrà,
source.
Rembrandt, Caravaggio. They all say it, Peter. So if you do not know Giotto, you don't have any context. You don't know what you're talking about. Because you are like all the Americans I know, the movie guys who can drop all these hot names, Warhol and whatever. But even Warhol knows who Giotto was and studied Giotto. So who are you? And I'm thinking, damn, man. I feel like historical idiot. Man. And so my buddy Brian Hamill, arguably one of the great poster photographers ever, brother of it's nice that Mark Maron not only knew him and his brothers, Pete Hamill and John and Dennis Hamill, the Hamill clan of true artists. But Brian is one of the poster of De Niro in Raging Bull with the sweat,
yes.
Manhattan, Woody Allen's Manhattan, under the bridge, man. Redford with the natural, gifted photographic artist.
Yeah.
And a longtime friend. And we all celebrate yesterday, right? And all my friends, because I go to Venice every year for Christmas, Hanukkah. All Christmas, Hanukkahs I spend in Venice for the since that day, since Vittorio.
Really?
Yeah, man.
I would love to steal that tradition.
From Japan, I went to Venice, and I never looked back. And I told my mother, I said, I'm going to Venice. I'm in Venice I missed 2 out of the last 34 years. I missed 2 Christmases.
Oh my gosh.
So Brian and I, we do that. We go to Venice, and we go to Padua. We were initially not going to do it. We were going to go to St. Bart's. He broke up with a girlfriend, and I was doing a great movie, but it was a miserable time in northern Quebec. And he said, man, I don't want to go to St. Bart's. I said, well, he says, let's go to someplace dreary, man. I said, yeah, Venice is horrible, man. We hate Venice. We warn people. I says, yeah, let's go there, man. Let's go there 'cause I'm feeling terrible. You're feeling terrible. Let's go to the worst place for Christmas.
Yeah.
And that way, there'll be no place to go but up.
Yes.
Now, I wrote about this in Travel Leisure.
Really?
Yeah. Google it, Peter Weller's Christmas in Venice. I don't hype this to you out of the hyperbole of ego, although I do have a preponderance of attitude, as I say. Like this current administration does. I'm buried under this preponderance of attitude. But I tell you this, I say this to you, Travel Leisure, Peter Weller's Christmas in Venice, because I want you to go.
I want to go.
I used to write for them. But, you write articles for Cigar Aficionado, articles for Travel Leisure, whatever, write. And usually they'll edit them according to how many tourists they are applying to, or how many foodies are going to read this, how many whatever. Right? And they wanted me to write that thing about your Christmas in Venice, and they said, we'll do an app. We'll follow around for the camera for a second and have a little 45-second app. I said, I don't really want to do it because I know you guys are going to edit it, and it's not going to be, my thing. They said, okay, they promised to give us 1,500 words. We won't edit it. And I said, well, it's just going to be this experience of what happens this year. And so I highly recommend it because it does discuss me and Brian going. And Brian and I meeting in the old airport in Venice, in order to be depressed.
Yes.
Right? Because he says there will be no place to go but up. Well, start at the bottom.
Venice.
Venice is like, we hate Venice. And Venice in winter is like really dreary. And it's Don't Look Now. It's Nick Rogue, with Donald Sutherland with little red girls and with knives going to kill you.
Yes.
It's all these horror stories and whatever, And Venice has got an evil thing to it, like New Orleans.
Yeah.
And they know it, but they accept it, man.
Very spooky.
Something about the canals.
No, but they accept it. Look. They know it, and New Orleans accepts it. They go, yeah, that's part of our jam, man.
Yeah.
We got voodoo here. We got the other gods here too, man. And so when Brian and I landed, we landed about 45 minutes apart. It was like 5 o'clock. It was getting dark. And it's toasty, and he's coming up from Sicily, and I'm coming from Quebec, and we get in a taxi boat, and we're looking at those lights flickering through a magenta sunset, because it's the air from the cool air hits the sea, and it's like this gauze. And that turns that sun into, like, instead of orange, it turns it into like this magenta gold. It's bizarre. And all the great paintings are painted in winter in Venice because of that sun.
Yeah.
Because of that filter of the dispensing air, right?
Okay.
We're looking at that, and the lights flickering, in the bell towers. And I never forget Brian with his Brooklyn Irish thuggery. He's turning to me. He says, Peter, I think this is going to be really good. And man, it was 10 days of heaven.
Really?
We walked Venice soup to nuts, man. We discovered Venice just like we got up at 7 every day. Walked it one way, walked the other, walked it one way, walked the other for 10 days. And something, I turned to him at the end of it. We're going up to Paris for New Year's. I said, Brian, I'm spending every Christmas here, man. This is the most freeing, inviting, historical, weird, and inspiring place ever. And we went to Padua to see what Vittorio. And those days you could smoke a cigar and walk in with a cappuccino. What are we going to see here? And Brian, he's a photographer. And I'm a movie guy. And we walk in the front door. And nowadays it's hermetically sealed. It's been restored. You got 15 minutes. That's it. But this is something that Da Vinci talks about. These are frescoes that Michelangelo sources. This is like, it's true that everybody has sourced them. Vittorio Storaro is correct. There's not a painter of the Western world that hasn't gone to there. And this critic that came out about 5 years ago said, Giotto in the Cappella Scrovegni is the one event of Western art that you can't impugn. You cannot even criticize it. You can't even go there with, as far as texture, or one of these hoity-toity pretentious pieces of bullshit that people gauge art now. Because that is a jump-off place. That's Neil Armstrong going to the moon.
Yeah.
You're going to criticize that? You're going to, if
could
I
have
was
done
Neil
this.
Armstrong, what I would have said. But that's what art critics do, and art, enthusiasts and whatever. That's not for me, and I know what I like. But to quote Ernst Gombrich, you don't know what you like. You like what you know. And first of all, you got to admit naivete. And second of all, you got to have somebody take you by the hand and walk you through
what you're looking at.
History for Weirdos.
Yes.
And if you don't have somebody walking you through History for Weirdos, it's always going to be weird.
Yes.
But the thing is, if somebody walks you through and goes, look, see this here before? They're trying. See this fresco here from ancient Rome?
Yeah.
They had it down. It's lost. They're trying here in the Middle Ages. They can't do it. Okay, how come this guy can't? Okay, maybe because he's studying with this amazing mosaic guy, Pietro Cavallini, that we can see in Rome, who invents depth with pieces of glass. Depth with pieces of glass is Cavallini. Maybe it's because he's studying with him. It sure as hell isn't because he's studying with anybody. There's something comes off the chip, and all of a sudden you walk into the Cappella Scrovegni, you go, holy cow. And Brian and I went, we got to call Vittorio Storaro and thank this guy. And then I've thanked everybody since then, man. I've thanked everybody, cinematographers. I mean, Brian was working with, and I had just worked with Carlo De Palma, who was Antonioni's guy, and then he was with Woody Allen, and we just done Mighty Aphrodite, and Carlo De Palma, another guy says, "Oh man, Giotto and the Cappella Scrovegni. I mean, you guys never went there. I mean, you can't look at the Sistine Chapel without going there." So enough being made fun of. That's your anniversary.
Yeah.
That's
your
great
anniversary.
We need to go next year.
You got to go, and you got to. By the way, you got to book it in advance.
Yeah.
Online, and you got to stand outside. And by the way, get a little book on it. You can't believe it because it's gorgeous.
You got to know what you're looking at. You need context.
You got to know what you're looking at. It's a story. It's a great story.
There's gonna be a spike of weirdos gonna see it. I think in the next few 6 months or
I
so.
hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. Sometimes I can't get in. I just had to take. I do this golf tour with some real knuckle draggers, and they're fun though, man. They are fun because we do golf, food, art.
The whole gambit, yeah.
Yeah, they do. They're there for the art and the food.
Yeah.
I'm there for the golf because they say, "Okay, Weller, take us to the thing." And they're, "Where we going next?" And they're on the good foot to go and go and go and go and go. I went to see 3 Caravaggios I'd never seen in Sicily.
Oh,
I actually went there to play golf. They wanted to see the 3 Caravaggios, and I think, oh my God, I'm thanks with these guys because the St. Lucian, Syracuse is a Caravaggio. Never saw it, man. Oof, killer. So
is Giotto then what brought you into Renaissance art specifically?
No. The embarrassment of Storaro.
Okay.
You could say that the embarrassment of Storaro brings me into Renaissance because I did call Allie and go, "Hey, Allie, Vittorio Storaro just told me about Giotto and we just went to see Giotto and how come you never returned me?" She says, I did. You stopped at the Renaissance. You said it was too complicated. It was too filled with weirdos. It's too much weird. It's science. It's told me. It's like
it's all the things.
It's everything. Yeah. It's political. It's wars. It's taxes. It's you stopped. I told you, but you blew it off. You were stuck in the contemporary people. So I said, okay. So if you want to say that's what took me into it, yeah. That's what took me into it, Giotto. I start with the beginning. By the way, the book, Leon Battista Alberti. Now, dig this. On that note, let me hype this book for a second.
Yeah, please.
Okay, I get into the Renaissance, and you get into the Renaissance, and you go to academia. You talk about history for weirdos, man. Academia is weirdos.
That's very true.
That's so true.
Let's go back to that because you can hear. There's a great scene I directed a wonderful scene in Hawaii Five-0, right?
Okay.
And the nerd guy is interviewing an assistant nerd guy. And he's saying, look, let me get this correct. You got a problem with the moonshot. And the nerd guy, my guy says, what's your problem? And he says, well, it's really difficult. He says, why don't you explain it to me? Because I'm weird. So you can explain a weird thing to a weirdo. Let me guess. He says, you don't think that Neil Armstrong ever really set foot on the moon, right? Right? And the guy responds, no, that's not my problem. Oh, what is your problem? There is no moon.
What?
Oh, yeah.
And that's a scene I directed, man, and it's one of the most beautiful scenes ever.
I love that.
Because these guys totally underplay it. They don't go, hey. They just kind of talk like, there is no moon. Oh, really? And that's the history for weirdos.
Yes.
So, anyway, you guys got to go on your. I don't know where I was going with that, but that's.
I love
it's okay.
it. Well, how did you find Leon Battista Alberti?
Yeah.
On the moon. No. I'm doing this art. And there's a great guy named Walter Liedtke who's passed away. He was in the train wreck going to Scarsdale in New York, but he's one of the heads of European paintings with Keith Christensen and Andrew Bayer at the Met. So some friends, Maria Connelly of the Fashion Institute, and later on the American Folk Museum. I met these friends in Italy. One of the things I'm doing a movie for Dino De Laurentiis in 1987, 88. And I don't know anything. This is before I even know about Giotto.
Okay.
And Maria, I pay her at the American Academy. I meet her to take me to Florence to walk me around these Jesus paintings, man. And by the time we're done, she's smart, but I have no interest in him, man. I have no interest in Jesus, Moses throwing manna from the sky. Who cares? So that's when Giotto comes up. 4 years later, I got to go back. So I call up Maria Connelly. Say, hey, sorry, but would you turn me on? I'm kind of back into it. And then she takes me to the Met, and I meet Walter Lieke and so forth. And I go, look, we're going to do a deep dive on this. And they said, go to Syracuse. Take a 10-week course. They have a beautiful 10-week course. They have more investment programs abroad than anybody else. I said, okay. So I take it with a great guy who's a mentor to me, Gary Radke. And you go around Italy, pardon me, and I'm with 12, 19-year-olds. I'm 53, man, and we're 12, 19-year-olds. And they're fun. One boy and the rest girls.
Okay.
And they're fun, man.
Yeah, I'm
so much
sure.
fun because about a third of them are there to spend the old man's Amex, and about a third of them are there to look at the art. But they're just fun. They're not going to be as ruthless as the people I am going to study with. Well, 4 23-year-old girls. Because what happens out of that is Radke invites me to do this very special program at Syracuse in Florence. We basically do the whole thing in Florence.
Wow.
You do a semester in Syracuse, then you go and you do a year in Florence. And you got to teach, you got to be a TA, you got to be in front of the art, you got to write, you got to do calligraphy, you got to study the documents, and you got to do German, English, Italian, because essentially we got to remember one of the great anomalies about Renaissance art, it's Catholic art. It's Catholic, and indeed there's some Old Testament or Tanakh, which is the Jewish Bible iconography, but it's essentially Catholic art. The people who revive it, because it's considered naive in the 20th century. This is the reason why I didn't want to go back to it. Because in the 20th century, you got Cézanne and etching, and you got Cubism, and you got Juan Gris, and you got these guys who are like flying Klimt and flying off the wall, right?
Yeah.
So this Catholic biblical art is naive stuff. So the people that reinvented it, people go back to the docs and start going, wow, this is the first time everybody took documents of this thing, talking about weird history, are Jews. The great Jewish scholars of the turn of the century in the Cafe Society centers, intellectual centers of the world. I'm talking about, Warsaw, I'm talking about Prague, I'm talking about Krakow, Vienna, Budapest, Berlin. This is the explosion of intelligence coming. This is, and then of course, the Weimar Republic falls and fascism takes over and everybody runs. But these scholars, I'm not talking about one or two. It doesn't matter whether it's Panofsky, Steinberg, Wittkover, Krautheimer, on and on they go. And they go to England and they go to NYU as a large Jewish endowment. But those are the scholars that resurrect Renaissance art.
Wow.
And somebody's going to do a dissertation on that, that the salvation of, and there's a whole lot of like gentrified Christians out there going, that's not true. Yes, it is true. The Jewish intelligentsia academia of the post-World War I scene, or pre-World War I scene, with Berenson and Duveen, who was the very first Dutch Jew, was the first people who got the United States into collecting art.
Okay.
This is who gave us the Renaissance back. These people. So it's one of the great anomalies, incredible, sort of sophisticated, weird pieces of history ever. And so the Renaissance is like, I'm jumping on this, man. I said, man, I got to learn this stuff. And so Radke takes me 10 weeks through this. And I said, look at these Jewish historians. Look at what Panofsky says about this. And look what this guy says about, and you got to read German. You got to read this stuff. He says, you qualify for this very special program at Syracuse, where you do this entire master's degree basically in Italy. And I said, oh, great, I'll go over there. I'll do that. There was a strike in SAG after.
Okay.
Everybody's having a strike. I said, I'll go over there, man. You know what I'll do, man? I'll walk around. I'll dig some art. I'll learn some stuff. And then I'll go down to my house in Positano and groove. No. They'll get there and say, you have had no undergrad credits. You've got to audit these classes from 7 o'clock to noon. Then you got to take this calligraphy, paleography, la, 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 la.
You had to catch up.
Yeah.
Play catch up, man. I was 3 weeks into this thing. My now wife and my mother come over to visit. I said, I'm out of here, man. I'm out of here. This is too much shit. I'm a late guy. I want a Ferrari. What the fuck am I doing this for, man?
Yes.
Yeah. Why am I walking to school?
Why am I walking?
And listening to academics drone on. Man, I have to take a fresco class. Elliot, with one of the greatest restorers in the world, who became a buddy. I have to learn how to do fresco. I don't want to learn that. I have to learn how to do egg tempera. I don't want to learn that. I have to stand on scaffolds and look at paint restoration. What the hell is this shit? Okay, My mother yells at me again, says, look, you don't quit nothing. We're standing on the Ponte Vecchio. She says, you don't quit nothing. You never quit. The Wellers don't quit. This is tenacity, baby. You stay. So it's funny, 51 years old, listening to a 79-year-old mom.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I really
She kept you
gotta hear.
grounded, though.
Yeah.
My mom kept me grounded for. Listen, my mom said to me, I hadn't seen her in 2 years. She comes to Venice to join us in Venice, and she walks off a plane. I hadn't seen her. I say, Mom. She goes, what's with your hair? That's 55. Can't you get a haircut? You got the money? That's my mom. That's a mom, man.
Yep.
Moms never end being
So
a mom.
true.
You
That
know
is so
right?
true.
Your daughters will be, 28, and we're going, really, come on, you got to really cut that necklace is horrible. So and that's what I did. I stayed with it, and then I found my jam, which is essentially violent images of Franciscanism. St. Francis was the first person to reinvent. Also, Giotto is a big Franciscan artist. And St. Francis, I'll tell you the side story of History for Weirdos.
Yeah.
The idea of Christ, right, in the Middle Ages was one of a savior who was a godhead, savior of the world, or going to live forever. And the images of Christ on a cross, which come to us from Greece, essentially, are what we call it's images of Christ living.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Franciscans, because St. Francis is never a priest, but he preaches, he's a tent revivalist. And he realized a rich boy in short order, in the 1219, there's a war going on with Perugia. And he says, these people ain't got that. 1209, actually. These people are lost, man. All they're hearing is like, Christ is going to win and we ain't.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody got to teach him this human story of Jesus. And that's what he does. He walks around talking about the human story of Jesus. Walk the walk of suffering and understanding everybody else's suffering and helping. Look, man. It's like a Zen dude, man.
Yeah.
And he's
Very
never a
much
priest,
so.
never does a mass, never whatever. But, within a short amount of time, he's got a lot of people following. I follow the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm hearing bullshit from a pulpit going, you're shamed and you're blamed and you're going to go to hell, and that guy walks along and says, you know what, you don't have to listen to that, man. Just be kind to the guy in front of you.
Yeah.
Help the people, brother, son, sister, moon, treat earth like it's heaven. He's the saint of peace. He's the saint of ecosystems, man.
Animals.
Animals,
yeah.
all of it, man.
We love St. Francis.
I know you.
Yeah.
How can you go wrong? Look,
Yeah.
it's not BS about Francis. The guy was that. The guy preached compassion, walking the human walk. Okay, this is not crazy, but by 1217, when he's given a permit, an order, by Innocent III, who's one of the toughest popes around, because he's got a champion where he comes from in Umbria. It's like 250,000 people following this guy, man.
Wow. I didn't
By,
realize that.
by the time he dies, man, there's 500,000 people in Europe, man. I'm talking about from Egypt to Israel.
Wow.
That's wild.
And so when I was doing a PhD historiography class about art, a guy named Jeffrey Simcox, great guy, Oxford, taught UCLA, looks like Robert Redford, and he's doing a historiography, which is the history of history, and I bring up Franciscanism, and I go, the transformation of imagery, because it's the first time that Christ is painted in suffering, dying, pietà, dying on the cross, not winning. You understand it, private images of devotion, Christ in pain, people in pain. You understand that. You're supposed to understand it because it's not necessarily just you, the penitent, going, forgive me, but it's you identifying with world suffering so that you might go out and heal it. This sounds like hoity-toity, touchy-feely nonsense of the 21st century. This is what this guy was preaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, you helped the guy, you helped the person in front of you with kindness. This is Buddhist, man.
Yes.
This is
very
original
similar.
Vajrayana Buddhism. Handle what's in front of you with kindness. The world will handle itself. So I bring this up with Simcox's class. I say, like the biggest transformation of perhaps spirituality in the Western world, Franciscanism, and this woman down the way who's an intellectual historian, she says, wait a minute. The biggest transformation? Are you kidding me? The biggest transformation, Weller? That's a little bit over the top. And thank God Simcox steps forward because he is an intellectual historian as well as an image historian. And he goes, hang on. He's right. There has been nothing that has hit the Western world spirituality movement like Franciscanism. And they all stop and go, what? And you can see it in the imagery. Look, St. Francis brings us the action movie. For
How
crying out loud,
so?
man. Because people are in pain and they're twisted and they're in contortion and there's torsion and they're like screaming or yelling or whatever. You understand
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're
This-
suffering.
this? This changes also. There's a place in Pergamum
Mm-hmm.
in ancient Greece that does the same thing. Franciscan's the reinvention of it. You know, there's ethos in the original classical age of Greece. The perfect Belvedere Apollo is standing with a perfect proportion. The Venus de Milo, the perfect nude.
Yeah.
You can divide it into squares and go, right. Okay, when's the first time you see somebody throwing lightning bolts through the sky? Or somebody ducking arrows? Or somebody twisting on a crucifix? That's St. Francis, man. That's all Franciscan art. That's all.
That's
so
so
that
cool to
becomes my
think
jam.
about.
And that's what I do at Syracuse. And I must say, I was with 5 women, 2 of them remain friends. But they all resented me.
Why?
Wait,
Because
why?
I didn't have an undergrad degree.
Oh.
Because
You
it was
didn't do
like
the traditional
because I was a
path.
weirdo.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, I was a total weirdo. Yeah, I didn't go to Rutgers, Harvard, Yale, UPenn, Michigan, Johns Hopkins, any of these like snotty places.
Right.
I went to North Texas and played jazz, man. That's not
Yeah.
art history. Did you have any classes in Michelangelo? No, I didn't. But I came in through the back door, and essentially thanks to Gary Radke and Alan McGraw and Walter Leadgame, Rick Cannelli, and a lot of other people in Vittorio, et cetera, and Rab Hatfield, who mentored me there, I learned some stuff and went on to get the master's degree and then applied for a PhD at UCLA and NYU. Got accepted to both, and because I had a kid,
Mm-hmm.
stayed at UCLA and got a PhD and became a real smarty pants. So.
Wow.
I get to say doctor. Yeah, that ain't honorary because people meet actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
with doctor. Look, I got my PhD. I was hooded. 2 weeks later, I'm on a golf course, and there's a guy there. He's like an investment broker,
Yeah.
billionaire dude.
Oh my
He says,
god.
"Where'd you get your honorary degree in?"
You're like, it's not honorary.
And I'm
brother.
standing there with a golf club, about to wrap it around his head. It was like 10 years of my life.
I was about to say it
And
takes
thank
at
God
least
my friend
7.
Brian Wozniak, who was my first friend
Oh.
and student, with all, he's a great guy. He intercedes in my place, and he goes, "Hey, Joe, that's not honorary. He's the real deal. Renaissance Italian art history." He calls this guy out. He goes, "What? Renaissance Italian?" Thank God I had a speaker there.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting there with my arms crossed, like, listen to him. Listen to him.
You had your own Cicero at that moment.
Yeah, Dave, exactly. Cicero. Yeah, speaking of Cicero, we could talk for him forever, man.
Oh, yeah. All
My
day.
favorite guy. So what do you want to ask me?
Well, first thing that comes to mind, speaking of the Renaissance, you're very much so a Renaissance man.
Yes.
My wife says that, but then again, she loves me. I think.
Yeah, we think. We hope so.
I think the same thing about her. So,
yeah,
yeah.
you think.
You think.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a lot of listeners that I think they love hearing about people who were multi-passionate,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are multi-passionate. Do you have advice for anyone who loves many things but maybe feels like, oh, I need to choose one?
But that's the thing about, but everyone doesn't think they can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you got a one-track pony and you got 170 IQ like Albert Einstein or something like that, you're a one-track. It's what you do and that's what you know. If you're Mozart, I never forget my friends from improvisational theater, Peter Riegert and David Rossi and some other great actors. When Amadeus came out, right? And this great article in the New York Times says, Leopold would tell, Wolfgang, Mozart, there's 3.
Yeah.
Get up and play your Bach. Get up and play Bach. So there's very few people. And David Ross is a great actor, one of the great unsung funny actors ever. He goes, yeah. Reminds me of my dad. He would say, get up and take your shoes out of the den. I go, yeah, that's what I got. So very few people are Mozart, right? Most people are struggling along. And then you find your jam, and then you go do your thing. And when I realized I wasn't going to be Miles Davis, I was talking about this with Mark yesterday. I'm on a bandstand, just like Whiplash. Somebody's yelling at me. I'm not cutting this thing. There's a tune called Cloudburst, a great bassy tune. I'm not cutting a solo, man. I'm not cutting a thing. I think I'm not going to be Miles Davis. I'm not going to play on a bandstand the rest of my life for $49 a change. I got to find something. I stay out of Vietnam, but I thank God I go back to jazz. But at that time, I'm a jazz guy who's going, I can't do it, man. I'm not going to be the greats I went to school with, Bones Malone or Lou Marini or Dean Parks or all these. These are savants, by the way, who played in every record you hear. Bruce Fowler. These are guys, names you don't know, but Lou Marini was on the SNL forever and ever.
Okay.
But those are the guys who are like the top when I'm going to school, and I'm not going to be them. So I'm that guy who's figuring out what to do. I'm not multifaceted, passionate. I'm looking for something to keep me out of Vietnam. Because my dad's back in Vietnam, my brother's back in Vietnam, and they're looking for my ass to go.
Like, no, thank you.
What am I going to do? Okay, the only thing I know how to do, I've done it for fun, is act. I've done it for fun. A great guy named Bob Yanni, who was the boy genius of Walt Disney, one of the guys who started the Mouseketeers and started Orlando and started Disneyland. Robert Yanni, like a P.T. Barnum for Disney, was drafted on a stage. He heard me sing once and put me on a stage. But I was doing it for kicks, man. I didn't know. I wasn't going to sing. I wasn't going to act. But now I need something. Yeah. Because I'm not going to Da Nang. I'm sorry. As a matter of fact, my brother and my father over there, I'm against this war. This war is nonsense, man. So what do? Okay, I'm going to act. So I changed my major to theater and English. So I'm finding my way along. And then I'm acting for kicks, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I never forget, I was watching my professor, Dr. Stanley Hamilton, a couple guys on stage, talking about what acting is. And then I said, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to act. This is all I got. This is all I got. And I hitched a ride down to visit my dad, who was down in law school. And this cat picked me up and said, what do you do? I said, I'm an actor. He goes, oh, great. I said, I couldn't believe it came out of my mouth. And then I told my mother, I got applied for a scholarship to acting school, which was totally denigrated by my mom, who I thought, because she's the artistic quotient. Yeah. She's the artistic weirdo in the family, right? Yeah. My dad is a straight ahead, like, played by the book guy. She says, no, you're not going to New York. You never survive in New York. New York will kill you. I know New York. New York will eat you alive. You're going back to school, man.
Wow.
Your dad will never support you in New York. You're never going to make it in New York. New York is like a gladiator fight. And so I go, shit. So I go to my dad. My dad's in his chambers, and I'm going to go to New York, man. I don't care if I have to take a loan. Yeah. I'm going. I got accepted to this acting school. So I knock on the door. My dad, never forget this. I just told this yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. But I tell my dad, he goes, I know why you're here. I said, what? Your mother called. I said, you want to go to New York? I said, I'm going to New York. He says, good. I said, good. He says, yeah, just, that's what you want to do it, fail on your own time. I go, so you support? He says, what do you need from me? I said, I need about $600 a month to live on. He said, how long? I said, 2 years. When are you going to pay back? I said, give me 2 years after I finish the school. He said, okay, done.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow, that easy?
I said, really done? He says, listen, that's what you want to do? That's all I ever did. I wanted to fly. I didn't want to fly. I wanted to be in law. I didn't want to be in law. That's what you want to do it. I'll give you some cheap advice. Stay out of bars. Okay? And he, adios, shook my hand, gave me a hug, and off I was.
What a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, from the guy I thought was going, no, you ain't doing it, to sure done. From the mom, who I thought was like the total artistic. She's a piano player. She's a jazzer. She's the person who turned me on art. She's the person who like encouraged me about all this stuff, man. But she thought, but that's the mom with the kid, man.
They want to protect you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 21-year-old kid's going to go to New York, really?
Yeah.
And die? And by the way, this is in New York. She's right. This is New York where you have a white kid. Yeah. Forget about race. A white junkie walk up to you on Fifth Avenue. Yeah. Anytime during the day. This is not the New York of sublime, no interference, you can't smoke at Central Park. Yeah. Right. Forget it.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Wild West New York, man. This is right on the hinge of, the Harlem riots and stuff. Yeah. And by the way, the Knapp Commission is going on. Serpico hasn't even been shot yet. Right? Billy Friedkin's about to finish his film on French Connection. So this is a New York of cops who are dicey. Uh-huh. And ain't just the street. So I understand her dilemma with it, right?
But you took the risk.
Yeah. I took the risk. You know something? I get weepy thinking about it because I took the risk. And And then I got nothing but joy and support from my mom. And I think of her often. And so, there's an interesting thing about being a sober guy, which I am, is that in the midst of, and I was never really a tank job like wreck a car, get in a bar fight, end up in jail or whatever. It's a matter of fact, I got in bar fights, but I never ended up in jail, and I never ended up killing anybody or hurting anybody willfully. But in spite of that, when one is playing, as my friend Mark, another guy who doesn't indulge anymore, said, we were outlaws. Didn't matter how much money you were making. Doesn't matter if you're going to Studio 54 or how fast a car you were driving, whatever, man. If you're doing drugs in the late 70s, you're looking over your shoulder. Because there's a cop or a thug going to take you down that fast. So he said, you ever think about that? About 2 years ago, I thought, yeah, man, we thought we were impervious. Why? Because we're white guys of money.
Oh, yeah.
And surely they're not going to mess with us. Oh, yeah, they are. And the lunacy of that, and thank God, a spiritual identity or something rang my bell. And I got out of that. But the product of quitting that stuff, so one of the great fallouts of it is, as much as one, and the child is the father to the man, and I've got this great, beautiful, and fantastic, intelligent academic friend who's the head of a department who still got this bump with her mom. And the mom was one of those hands-on, and she will not go make it up with the mom. Okay, she's 45. How much time do you think you've got to make it up with the mom? And the thing is that I realized that what sobriety gave me is that the child is the father to the man. We just sit there and expect your parents to come to you and say, once in a while that happens. Once in a while a parent comes and says, excuse me, for paddling you when you were 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Now parents don't touch again. Or falsely blaming you for whatever, or like sending you home too early, whatever the sin is, once in a while a parent will do it. But most times the parents are excoriating themselves for screwing up. That's what most parents are doing. And my dad did it with my brother, and my dad thought he'd screwed up with me. And, I'm in the backyard, I'm shooting RoboCop. My dad's a federal judge, a made guy, and we're cleaning the slate. And my dad was like running down some strange stuff that I thought I was going to hold him accountable for. And he was actually thinking that I was accountable for a lot of it, and I was. And he said, I'd like to say that it was my responsibility for throwing a motorcycle off a bridge and, and getting busted, for drinking beer on the economy and stealing, and, breaking somebody's nose in a basketball fight. So did any of this ring a bell to you? And I go like, wait a minute, did I do that? He goes, yeah. Yeah. And I'm always thinking, like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And I go, my God, man.
But he was willing to talk to you about it?
Yeah, because I pulled his chain on it. I just written him a letter using the I word. I'd certainly like to talk to you about this. Were you having a bad time? Were you whatever? But the child, I had to go to him. The child's got to go. The child's got to go up to the parent and go, hey, can you talk to me about this?
Yeah.
I know a guy who was sober alcoholic who went up to his dad, and his dad was very young. He slapped his kids. And then he went up to him when they were teenagers, when the dad got sober, and apologized to his 2 kids.
Wow.
And the kids wouldn't accept it, because they're in their teens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going, va fanculo, man.
Yeah.
We're not letting you off the hook. And they separated from the dad. Okay, now the dad goes on to lead a sober life, a healthy life. Can he get in touch with these kids who are now drinking? Who are now holding him accountable for all this shit? No. And holding him accountable and holding him accountable. And so the dad has to go on his way and go, okay, I made my amends to the man, when they were 17 and 18, but they ain't going to let me off the hook. And then, thank God, one of them, by the time he turns like 48, goes, he's now sober. He goes, I forgot it. My dad actually fucking apologized to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's huge.
Huge.
That's
and
giant.
I never let him off the hook.
Yeah.
And then he goes and asks his dad. This makes me weepy, man. And he's told me about it. He goes, asks his dad forgiveness for holding his dad accountable for the accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And that's maybe the thing that sobriety has given me the most is an objectivity. Look, speaking of history for weirdos, maybe the weirdest history that anyone can walk through is their own.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we're
I love
clipping
that.
that for for social media. That's perfect.
Yeah, because I can talk about Cicero forever.
Absolutely.
Because Cicero,
Who can?
but the great ego trip of Cicero, the great arc of him, like stepping in his own crap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, starting off as a voice for the people, and then winning with the hubris of fame and fortune, and unbelievable stuff, and then people tell him to shut up about Mark Antony. No, man. The guy I went after his dad. I'm going to go after him.
Big mistake.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Can you just shut up? No. He's going to go down, and he, all of a sudden he gets a phone call. Hey, guess what? Mark Antony made a deal with Octavian, and they're both coming into Rome looking for your ass. So you're talking about hubris.
Yeah.
So you can walk through that history of a guy who cannot shut up.
Yeah.
And that's his problem.
Yeah. I've read the letters between Caesar and Cicero. They
it's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then you got the guy. Then you got us walking through your own history, which is about as weird as it gets.
Yeah.
And the best thing I could do is like sort of go to mom in my mind and dad in my mom and say, "Love you, forgive you. Please forgive me for being an idiot."
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness isn't easy.
No, it isn't.
It's not.
Especially when your dad calls you out, and you think it's all your dad. Mm-hmm. And your dad hates. Is this ring a bell with your weirdness, your own fucking hysterical weird history? And you go, oh, really? Yeah, it's pretty weird. Yeah, my history with you is pretty weird, Dad. Thanks.
It's so funny that we ended up here because I don't know if you know this, but my actual day job is a therapist.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a psychotherapist.
So that we,
Oh
of course,
my
we ended
gosh,
up
I
talking
should
about
shut up
parents.
No,
keep
please.
going.
You're
I love
you're a
it.
psychotherapist.
Yes.
Of
yeah.
what intelligence group or what gender or what?
My background is licensed clinical social worker. I'm a psychotherapist. I do a lot of trauma therapy when we're not recording the history podcast.
Yeah.
Trauma therapy, man.
Yeah. So a
Like
lot of mom and dad stuff.
Like physical trauma therapy.
No, emotional trauma. I work with a lot of women with childhood trauma, actually.
And before that, she worked at the VA and was working with veterans.
The VA here in Brentwood.
Yeah.
That's tough, man.
Mm-hmm.
My brother was sadly a victim of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. The Vietnam veterans had it really rough.
Well, my brother was a member of Mensa and a genius and a Phi Beta Kappa and the 5 books in a week and way ahead of his jam, man.
Yeah.
And he did tours as a LRP, which is Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol at night, 4 guys, carry your own gun and do your own deal. And he went through many, many jobs when he got out. Agent Orange victim, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he never sought that. He was too smart. Too smart for therapy, too smart for sobriety.
That's tough.
Too smart for God, too smart for... that runs in the family, by the way, with certain people.
Intellectualizing things?
If you got the... everybody can't be Einstein.
Yeah.
Who essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing Einstein because I would like to had a lunch with him. So what's the difference between God and science? Basically, it's not totally jamming on me. Like, there is no difference, man. Science is just an attempt to explain God. For crying out loud,
Yeah.
Why are you guys
arguing
dichotomizing this? There's somebody's parables about when the earth was built. That's a parable. That's a lesson about building. And get off it.
Yeah.
And like the great Leo Steinberg, I'm going to get back to this in a second, but Leo Steinberg, arguably my mentor and arguably the greatest art historian in the 20th century, the guy that defended the iconography of the greatest Baroque church in Rome and defended Picasso's formalism and, the first guy to defend the cleaning of the Sistine Chapel and wrote on everything. And I couldn't meet him. It's like meeting Marlon Brando. Finally, I met him, right? and finally, I sat down because he smoked cigars. I smoked cigars. We'd go to the Grand Event in New York. I pumped this guy through dinners for him. Leo Steinberg, his father was Trotsky's secretary.
Oh my God.
And he escaped Stalinist Russia and went to Germany, changed his name, and then had to escape Germany
Wow.
because of the fall of the Weimar Republic and the rise of the Nazis and fascism. And he said his father was a rabbi. And I asked him about, like, okay, in psychology or in art history or in anything, like Einstein trying to rationalize or tell people who are a lot dumber than him, the intersection of science and God, and that the books about God are just, parables and attempts to explain, they're stories, they're life stories about it, right? And how do you rationalize that with, your rabbinical background, your dad's, and talking about art? You don't meet many religious people talking about art.
Yeah.
And he said this thing that seared me, which a lot of people are going to like throw stones about. But he says, we got into Einstein, and he basically was saying, Einstein had a great point about the parables of books.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, listen, my father would probably roll in his grave because he was a rabbi, but I have to say this, that the heralding, and I'm paraphrasing what Leo said, the heralding of any book is a violation of the first commandment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Look, I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And that includes books, man.
Yeah.
Or images, or anything, or sacrosanct objects.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And the book is not the God.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, Leo, how many Jews and Christians have you said that there? He goes, Peter, not many. Because it angers them, because they want
so
to make
interesting.
the book. He says there is no holy book.
Yeah, because, that makes so much sense. I wonder.
The book is only the writing of the... So the next thing I do, I'm at UCLA at the time. By the way, the only reason why he called me is because he heard from the Met and all the hoity-toity people at the Met, because he goes into the Met. They said, oh, yeah, Leo Steinberg comes in. This is the Metropolitan Museum in New York. You understand? This is one of the apexes of sophistication of art.
Yeah.
From Phoenician chariots all the way to whatever, to Vermeer. And Leo says, oh, yeah, Leo will come in once in a while and he'll hold forth on someone. I go, what do you mean hold forth? He says, well, he'll walk about Duccio, who's a medievalist, contemporary Giotto, spatial theory to the figurative lines of Peter Paul Rubens. I go, oh my God, man. I said, well, is somebody going to call this son of a bitch for me, man? And finally I get a call. He says, is this Peter Weller, an actor who is working on PhD? And I go, yeah. And he asked me the question, to go back to your thing, how do you find your own jam with regards to many different passionate points?
Yeah.
And my answer is this, what my dad said: A, stay out of bars.
That's a good one.
That's a really good one.
Because bars will just waste you. Well, it doesn't necessarily waste your time. My brother decided to drink again and went into bars, and he said, look, I'd rather spend time at bars with my Vietnam vet friends. So get off my back. That's his choice, man. And he died of alcoholism. So, you know what? If that's his choice, that's another thing. I can't save people who are not looking for answers.
Yeah.
Me, I'm looking for answers.
Yeah.
But that's just me. And so I say, A, find out what you're really passionate about. And by the way, that's written in Sanskrit. Find out what you really want to do and do that. That's not 21st century hypo blah. Find out what you really want to do and do that. And then when you're doing that, if you find out something else you really want to do that. But here's the other thing. Jane Bolker, I had never met Jane Bolker, but I'd certainly like to, wrote a book called Writing Your Dissertation or Anything in 15 minutes a day. She interviews about 185 people, and I took her workshop because I was not going to finish a dissertation. Are you kidding me? I'm not gonna. I got work to do, man. It's movies.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit down and write a dissertation. I got the ideas and I pitched it and I passed the exams and whatever. But to sit down and write it,
Oh,
No
yeah.
way.
ugh.
Yeah.
To sit around and write 286 pages and 215 images and no, I'm not gonna do that. And then somebody says, read this book. Okay, this is the thing about how to follow many passions. To get back to your point, Jane Bolker's book basically interviews, and this is the short form of it, the people that she interviewed, be it what you do, which is interview journalism, be it what Casey does, whether it's social media journalism, whether it's like social studies or academics or film scripts or whatever. The people that she interviewed, and it was all based on the fact that she could not write a dissertation, and then she went to interview these people, like, what was your secret? They all got three things in common, almost every single one of them. One is, A, they write the second they get up.
Oh, wow.
Not whether they get up at 6 a.m., okay, or noon.
Yeah.
Okay, so Leo wrote late and would crash late and watch TV, and he would get up at noon. Leo Steinberg was a noon guy. Boom, right.
I think Maya Angelou did the same.
Maya Angelou, same thing,
Yeah.
man. She's
Yeah.
interviewed all the way. Okay, Gore Vidal, he liked to, sip, and he would hit the hay by 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
5 o'clock, boom. My friend Barry Fanero, the writer of the Golden Girls, same thing.
Oh, wow.
5:30. Second you get up. No internet, no phone, no talk to the kids, no nothing. Into the room. Maybe you make the coffee. That's it. That's the only thing you're let off for, man. And that's A. B, you commit to a very small amount of time.
Okay. You chunk it down.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
I took the workshop. And this woman stands up at Jane Bolker, aficionado, goes, commit to 15 minutes. She said, I'll tell you, 15 minutes will turn into 20 or 30 or whatever. But commit to 15 minutes. Get in there before you take the kids to school, before you do the thing, blah, 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 blah. Get in there and do your 15 minutes. And I mean, 15 minutes turns into an hour and a half in a second.
Oh, I'm sure.
But the thing is, if I go look at the clock or look at the snooze or the whatever, I'm not in it, man. Okay? And the last thing, these are like so simple. You think, come on, it ain't that simple. Yeah, it is. You cannot edit. And everybody from Luciano di Crescenzo, one of the great Neapolitan formless writers, funny guy, to Woody, to whatever. You write. Some people call it zero draft. Some people call it draft one. Some people call it a blowout. They're all different names for it. But the second that you get into editing, no, let me go see what I wrote yesterday.
Yeah.
You're cooked. Because then your left brain judgment,
takes over.
it's all over it, man.
Yeah.
And you ain't ever finishing it.
Which is probably why waking up and writing is smart, because your inner critic isn't as loud
Yeah.
first thing in the morning.
That's really, yeah.
And your right brain is flying. It's flying with invention. With like, there's a friend of mine who has a friend who modeled for Salvador Dali.
Wow.
And he said Dali, he was a model, and he was a legit model, and he was a big cowboy-looking guy. My friend's friend was. And Dali would have him dress up. Different costumes that he had. And Dali would sit on a dais. And he was in New York, at the Essex Hotel. And would sit on a dais with like a hard rubber ball, like a handball,
Okay.
in front of a thing. And would look at this guy and say, move here, move there, move there. And I said, hold that. And then you just stare at him. And Dali, at this time in the 50s, 60s, 70s, right, would fade into like alpha state. He'd nap out.
Oh my god.
The guy would hold this, right? And the second that he'd nap out, he dropped the ball,
Uh-huh.
right? And the ball dropped, and he'd start drawing like a fool because that was his alpha state,
Yeah.
hallucinogenic.
The brainwaves, yeah.
The brainwaves, yeah, man. And that's what we got to source.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, if you're trying to source, like, I'll sit down for 5 hours a day during. So the whole thing, back to your thing about doing the passion thing, I have to get up and play the trumpet.
Yeah.
Like I quit trumpet, and somebody said, "Get up and play it." It's interesting. When somebody got me back into the trumpet in the early '80s, they said, "Play it for 15 minutes, man," and they said, "Play it when you get up," just like Jane Bolker's thing.
That's so
So
interesting.
it is, isn't it? So I get up and I play the trumpet for a minimum 15 minutes. Right when I wake up, and wake up my neighbors. My neighbors are somebody's putting me in it, right? But you got to do that when you get up and do it.
Yeah.
And then you got to do a little bit of it, a little bit of it, a little bit. And you go say, how did you write your PhD? How did you turn this into a book? I have no fucking clue. Except that I did it in 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing led to another, and led to another.
I love that.
Because I didn't put it on the back burner and wait until Friday after the golf game and all that jazz, man.
Right.
And the other thing, she does have, Jane Bolger has some other things, like you're walking through the thing and you get an idea, because you'll get an alpha state idea, like, oh, Casey Gates wants me to go to History for Weirdos. You write down the History for Weirdos thought, put it in your pocket. So you got some notes, so the next day you got a pocket full of notes. But basically, get up and do it. Small amount of time. 0 draft.
Yeah.
I can't believe how that works. Come on. Is that how it works? Yeah. That's how I learned a language. That's how I did things. Because I am not a real smarty pants. I'm a weirdo.
Love
that.
that.
I wouldn't say History for Weirdos. I'm that guy. I'm not the guy who can stand up in front of a United States Congress and go, and you're accountable for this, like screw up with Goldberg. I can't. I can't do that. But I can do the weird version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is come on and complain about it with you guys.
Yeah, I mean we love that.
Yeah,
This is amazing.
it's funny how you know so much about Cicero.
Oh, I mean, I'm a
that's
history
his-
nerd. I mean, if
that's
I
his
were
era,
to get
too.
a PhD, it would probably be late 2nd century or like 1st century BC Roman Republic.
I'm trying to convince
Yeah.
him to get his PhD.
Yeah.
Well, have you got a degree already?
Not in history.
In finance.
Why don't you go back, man?
That's what
How
I
old
tell
are you?
him.
33. I could go back.
I
I will
look,
go
man,
back.
You can go
Who am I
back.
kidding?
If they get a
Oh,
language
sure. When
course,
Peter Weller
listen,
asks,
look,
you're going back.
if they wanted me to take a course, despite the fact that I spoke these languages by this time.
Yeah.
They wanted me to take a course of German. I took it a night. I took a night course online.
There you go.
Yeah, I qualified
you-
for UCLA.
You did
They
say
s-
you need to learn Greek and Latin,
I need
right?
to know Greek and Latin, and I know a little bit of Latin. I know very little Greek. I can read the letters, and I can then translate it to Latin, and then translate it to English.
Okay, so like
know.
my friend Michael Brumbaugh, who was my Latin teacher, my Ciceronian teacher, Catalan Conspiracy,
Oh, yeah.
who's now tenured at Tulane, is still a great friend and a funny teacher, man. Is actually a Hellenist.
Oh.
And how did he learn Greek? He said, did some this, did some of this, did some of that.
Yeah.
And you got to do the Jane Bolger thing, man.
15 minutes a day.
15 minutes a day. I
I
know.
like that.
You got to take the course, and then you end up taking the course. And by the way, if you want to know Greek and you want to become a Hellenist or a Latinist, that's not difficult, man. That is not difficult.
Okay.
You
I
can
mean,
do it.
if you're telling me to do this,
These are
then I feel like I have to.
bicameral languages, man.
That's also
these are,
true.
These are. Look, here's where the predicate goes. Here's where the subject goes. Those are those languages.
Grammar,
They're
yeah.
not filled with idiomatic expressions like get your butt off the rock so I can
Yeah.
That's true.
ground my spirit. It's not. There's not a whole lot of that in it. You got to do it. And also, you got to read Edgar Watts' book. I talked about on the phone, Mortal Republic. The guy from UC San Diego who wrote this. He wrote the most accessible book about the 1st century BC that I've yet read, and it's really saddeningly accessible.
Saddening.
Well, because the thing is, he doesn't structure it. I mean, he's a great scholar, Watts,
Yeah.
Right.
but he's not structuring the fall of the Republic in the ozone of academia,
Okay.
which is what I had to read it in.
Oh,
And then
Yeah.
I have to go wait
Way
a minute, I
denser.
got to go back to Cicero.
Yeah.
I got to say, did he really screw this up this bad? Was his ego really that big? I mean, was Mark Antony truly that much of a stud?
I think he was.
Oh,
Yeah.
he was. He was an
Yeah.
active guy.
Well, I mean, and did he really want to militarize Rome?
Yeah.
And he did, yeah.
And was he that just incompetent at administration? I
Well-
think he
Mark
was.
Antony,
Mark
yeah.
Antony,
Well,
yeah.
totally, and they knew he was. And was the Republic that serious? Like it is not. Like, look, man, my only bitch about our Republic right now
Yeah.
is that my dad is rolling in his grave as a Republican judge, and my
Oh,
his
sure.
twin brother, the Republican, he was a Republican, and the AUSA of the Fifth Circuit, they're rolling in their grave because the great thing about Eisenhower Republicans, as much
Yeah.
as they were or the great Christopher Lloyd's dad, who was one of the great supporters of Eisenhower, is that they could say when politics was harming the Republic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so when the head of the Senate, who's a Republican, said, stand up and own this stuff, that you let this garbage slip, it doesn't matter whether it's classified or not, own it. And stop
Exactly.
trying to go, well, Hillary did that.
who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
It doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
it does not. It's
It
not
does not
now.
matter. So
Yeah.
the ownership of it, but we don't have that kind of republic right now.
No.
The republic is not more important than the ego. Now, Watts points out that that's an amazing mistake of the republic under Julius Caesar, essentially, and then Cicero and the triumvirate and so forth.
Yeah.
That the republic could not get off its purple horse
Yes, the purple horse.
and adapt to
I love that.
what the change of the vibe was. That much of the world was going, hooray, Julius. You know, when you think of Julius Caesar, dictator. Let's go history for weirdos, people.
Yeah.
Everybody's out there thinking Julius Caesar, oh, yeah, he went to Gaul and he conquered Gaul, la, 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 la. No, he was a liberal.
Oh,
yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
Absolute
For the people.
for the people. For the people, for, tax revocations, for land for the soldiers, for everybody gets a break here, man. No, and
He was against the oligarchy that was
totally,
present.
man. And let's
Yeah.
enfranchise these people if they're going to work for Rome. Make them citizens. Yeah, they get to pay some taxes and so forth. Stop using them as like third world free labor. Dun, 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 dun. Anybody want to think about that?
Yeah.
And that was
Any
Julius.
parallels?
But the dilemma that Watts's book is so brilliant at is that they won't get off the purple horse.
I know.
They're still in this image of what the republic is supposed to
look
be.
like.
man.
Exactly.
And that republic ain't been there for 200 years since the Grocki brothers, man.
Yes. Oh,
Get
we
off.
had an episode on the Grocki brothers.
Yeah.
You did. Who
Yeah.
talked?
Me,
It
this
was his
guy.
story.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I could, the Grocki brothers. I love them.
I
I
know.
love the popularity.
Way ahead of
Yeah.
way ahead of their time, man. But man,
Absolutely.
those
They
people,
paid for it.
They paid for
Yeah.
it because they go, hey, got an idea. All these tribes and all these people that have been fighting for us for a long time, man. And, they've been supporting us and so forth. Like, even the people where I live in the southern Italy. You got to remember, people, everybody thinks that Italy's Italy. No.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
different.
Those are Samnites, Oscans. Those are tribes, man.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's enfranchise them. What?
Oh.
We're killing you for that.
Yeah.
man. Yeah.
Incredibly unpopular.
Yeah.
Incredibly
So,
unpopular.
for those of you who don't know, the Grocki are around the turn of the century, 100 BC, around the time that Cicero and Julius Caesar were born. And, Rome is expanding. Rome is expanding. I'm telling Casey this. And it's expanding because of the commerciality of it. Okay, now I'll give you a case in point. The Mediterranean has become its lake. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
Lago Nostro.
Yeah.
Okay, why has the Mediterranean become its lake? Because in one couple of years, right, North Africa has been leveled. This is the Third Punic War, and they just basically take over North Africa. And then there's a little revolt, kind of a revolta problem in Corinth,
Yeah.
in Greece, and they got to go put down that and everything. Everybody goes, okay, you run us. So now they got Greece. And the last thing, which is my jam about, which I'm going to talk about at the Breakfast Club, is one of the great miracles of the Mediterranean is the western part of Turkey. Now I'm going to talk about that really quickly for you nerds out there, because this is what really changes art with Giotto. Okay, so you got a guy who's maybe the most important guy in the history of the Western world, Alexander.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We
Why-
know about him.
Yeah. Why is Alexander important? Because Alexander, the first guy to get this idea. First of all, he's taught by Aristotle. You know what I mean, like taught by Aristotle? His dad, the thug, Philip II of Macedonia, who lives in the rocks. He's like the bad guy at the back of the room, wants to be a cool guy.
Yeah.
He does. That's the
That's
dad.
exactly
No, he
who
does,
he
because
is.
you got Corinth and Thebes, and you got Athens, and they're all touchy feeling. They got space, and they got articulation of theater and architecture and science, whatever. And this guy's a thug, man.
He spent
He's
time at
living-
the bar.
Yeah, yeah, man. He goes, come on, man. I don't speak your Athenian Greek and all that stuff. No, man, you can't join. Sorry. Go play basketball or something, man. And he goes, you know what, man? I got a kid, and I'm gonna hire Aristotle to come over here and teach him. And supposedly there's a TV script at Paramount right now with it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And so that's like hiring Einstein
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
to come and teach your kid, because Aristotle's renowned. Come and teach my kid. So he teaches in 4 years. So what do you got? A good-looking kid who's an athlete and a stud and a warrior genius who's the smartest guy in the room.
Oh, yeah.
All in one. And what is this kid interested in? You know, I mean, his dad makes the deal with Corinth. This is joined with me against Thebes. And they go, sure. And he goes to Thebes, is joined with me against Corinth. His dad plays that game for a couple of, and Spartacus on the side. And then, then Athens goes, no, we're not joining you. And then he sends this kid in, and Alexander takes down Athens in about 8 days, or something like that, right?
Yeah. And he's like 16 at the time, right?
Close to 18.
Close to
18.
Okay.
Right.
Teenager.
Yeah, teenager. He's a teenager, and he takes that. Now, I'm gonna paraphrase right now. Okay, the speeches that we don't have, but we have remnants of, by Demosthenes.
Oh, yeah.
He stands up, and he's the guy that tells Athens why you can't let Philip of Macedonia in, and they're called the Philippics. Why can't you let Philip of Macedonia and his teenage smarty pants kid in? Because we're Athens, man. And we got Ptolemy, and we got math, and we got science, and we got architecture, we got plays, and we got theaters, and we got, that's us, man. We can't let this thug come in and like take us over. And these are called the Philippics because they're anti-Philip. Okay? Now we don't have them. There are remnants of them. Okay. Cut to the chase, right, later. That's around 338 or something like that. Cut to the chase later, okay, around 44, 5, 43. Cicero, against Antony, is going to do the same thing.
Oh, my God.
Because he studies the Philippics.
Oh.
And
I
his
didn't
speeches
know
are called the
that.
Philippics.
And didn't he know that Demosthenes loses? So it's like
Totally.
you're using the same
What?
playbook for a losing cause.
He
That's
knows
so
that Demosthenes
crazy.
loses. He knows that but the principles of them are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are a republic. We
Yeah.
have our own ethics. We are the purple. We have our own aesthetics. We cannot kowtow to the likes of a Mark Antony, who is a military stud who doesn't know his ass from his elbow about how to run a republic.
True.
But
It's
people,
very true, though.
yeah, it's true. But you know, and by the way, and he's up there. We got Octavian who's going to take him down, right? This kid who's the nephew of Julius Caesar who's gone off to take Mark Antony down, and people just say, "Hey, Cicero, don't shut up for a second, man. Let Octavian take him down, and then make the speeches. Why did you do that? No, I'm going to make the speeches now." Yeah, 2 days
Bad
of speeches
moves.
based on Philip of Macedonia, Demosthenes,
That's so
right?
interesting.
And yes, and read Edgar Watts because he's one of the greatest foolish events ever.
Yeah.
Oh, it really
Greatest
was.
foolish events ever.
Oh.
Okay, and I'll tell you how foolish it gets because we're talking History For Weirdos. I love this, man. This is like reading Edgar Watts, just like, oh God, man, because he puts it like, oh, this is like a short film.
Yeah.
Okay, Octavian, smart kid, teenager, right? Studied in Greece and so forth. Nephew of Julius Caesar is the adopted son of Julius Caesar. But Julius Caesar dies. Mark Antony makes his speech and shit like that. And they sort of don't want Mark Antony. And they get Decius Brutus and these guys to run him out. Octavian says, and Octavian has some troops. He's come from Spain at the point. He's got Lepidus and troops left over. He says to Cicero and everybody else, hey, not for nothing, my uncle is now my dad by law,
Yeah.
and he left me some goodies.
So goody.
Not the shit that Mark Antony says, that Julius Caesar left the Republic,
Yeah.
but just some personal goodies, like a couple of houses and a whole bunch of money and some stuff, and I'd like them. And the Purple Republic goes, okay, kid, you go with Lepidus and your soldiers from Spain and kill that asshole, and we'll think about giving it to you. And he goes, okay, you promise you'll give it to me? Yeah, sure. So off Octavian goes with the general Lepidus to get Mark Antony, and they get him trapped up, by Bologna. And they go, hey, we got him trapped. And the Republic, the Purple, goes, not good enough. We said kill him,
Yeah.
or you're not going to get your stuff. And he goes, look, man, the stuff is rightfully mine, man.
Mm-hmm.
Julius said it. I want the yachts and the Ferraris, man.
Yeah.
Give me the shit, man. And they go, no. And you kill him. Okay, so he gets him even more trapped by this lake outside of what's now Bologna. And he sends that. I love this. This is a short film. Some people say it's just one legionnaire, the guy who's like head of a cohort, is like, I forget what the and all my Latinists are going to go, Weller, come on, we told you who this was. The guy that's head of 500, like his right hand guy, right? Is activist military general.
I know what you're talking.
Yeah.
I forgot the word.
I can't think what it is. So I like it's one guy. Some people say it was actually 10 or 15 guys, but I like the one guy. One guy rides into Rome, very articulate dude, and interrupts the Senate. And they go, "You're interrupting." He goes, "Yeah, but I got words from your friend Octavian." And they go, "Oh, what is it?" And guy walks in, right? Armed to the hilt, with his helmet and his crew of his arm. He says, "I'm going to tell you this, guys, all 900 of you, right now. Octavian wants his will executed now, or you're going to be in deep shit."
Mm-hmm.
And they go, "How dare you threaten us?" He says, "I'm just saying. He wants his will executed now. He's giving you 2 times. He's giving you 2 chances. This is the 3rd chance, and you're out. So I want to go back and tell him that you're executing his will now, right? Or is it going to be deep shit?" And they say, "Get the fuck out of here." I tell that kid, the fuck off. We're the fucking Republic. We're the fucking purple.
Yep.
Right? He goes, "Okay." And the next thing you know, they all get a phone call, including Cicero. After Cicero's made his speeches against Mark Antony. And guess what's happened? Octavian has gone over to Mark Antony and goes, "Look, you're stuck in the Alps. I'm stuck down here. We ain't ever going to fight it out, man. Why don't we make a deal? You and me together. We'll include Lepidus, who's the general from Spain, and the 3 of us, just like my dad, just like Marcus Licinius Crassus, just like Pompey the Great, in 59, in Lucca. We'll make a triumvirate right now.
Yeah.
And all, like, 500,000 or 250,000 of us will ride down to Rome and tell those fat cat bastards to give it up." And Mark Antony says, "Done." And so all those guys who told Octavian to blow off, "You're a kid, you don't know shit," they underestimate his intelligence.
Yeah.
This is Alexander again. This is a guy with a vision. Mm-hmm. This is a teenager with a total vision of the world, like Alexander had. Yeah. This is not a guy on a horse. The Demosthenes thought it's just legions. No.
Yeah.
This is a dude who wants to take all the Hellenic ideals and throw them like potato chip crumbles into the world so that we'll grow up with an idea of a republic, an idea of space, idea of architecture, idea of plays, of theater, of science, and so forth. There ain't nobody with visions like that too much, man. Yeah. People say, like, this isn't a day when you can, not like Cyrus the Great, who also did the same thing, but in a day when, speaking of History for Weirdos, when you think of talking about conquest and disbursement and murder and get rid of them and enslave them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's not what Alexander was about, man. Mm-hmm. You don't enslave jack shit, man. Mm-hmm. You spread the culture in there and educate them.
Yeah. Yes.
And they were with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And intermingle and marry.
Yeah, intermingle, because you can't afford slavery.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
And not only is, like, morally oppressive, it's too fucking expensive. It's better to educate a man and have him on everybody on the same side. Okay, that's what Octavian is doing. Octavian is telling him, okay, you know what? Let's go in. And man, that Republic goes. And they call up Cicero and say, "Hey, Cicero, guess what? They made a deal." "What?"
Oh,
yeah, those speeches we told you not to make against Mark Antony, he's coming into town.
Yeah.
And he's looking for blood.
He's looking for blood, and they kill him. And you know what happens to Cicero, Casey? Mark Antony personally cuts off his head and hands, personally.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
And nails him in the forum to the rostrum.
Yeah.
His head, boom, his hands. And said, "This is this dick He's been like,
Cicero.
yeah.
Cicero, this douchebag.
I know. Who's not a douchebag, who's one of the great guys. Everybody's
Yeah.
ego got the better of him.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
That's a great lesson to learn.
Yeah.
It's a
That's
great
why
lesson
you
to learn.
study your history.
Yeah.
It's going to make a great miniseries
Oh,
Absolutely.
We would love that.
in
I know.
contemporary time.
Well, you also seem to love.
And you know what the name of it is?
What?
Cicero.
That's perfect.
Power, lust, and violence in a republic just like yours.
Oh my God.
Oh, that
That
is
subtitle
perfect.
is incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll put you to Dan. But you know something? Yeah, it's what it is. You know, and me and a guy, I'm going to give it to Dan, because me and a buddy of mine who's got a ton of things going on with YouTube already wrote the outline for it.
Really?
Yeah, we're telling you, we never tell anybody about it because
Oh my
it's our
gosh.
little baby secret.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Howard Gordon knows about it, but Cicero is the great story of hubris, of winning, of the people, of failure,
Mm-hmm.
of espionage,
Yeah.
of passion,
Wow.
yeah, of betrayal,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially undone. I mean, if you start with a guy who's got no entrance into Rome, because he's like, you know,
He's the novus homo, like the
he's
new
he's
man.
the new man.
Yeah.
That's like being a mercantile dude.
Okay.
You're not of the purple.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You got to work your way there. And to get the degree doesn't go to Greece and study that, and also do it by Julius Caesar. Hey, you want to be a lawyer, man? Go to Greece and study that stuff. Study oratory. You know, and Julius Caesar does. And he's a great advisor to his friends and a great pal, and then becomes the guy in Rome.
Yeah.
But starting as a people's guy and then ending up and supporting the end of domestic terrorism and supporting the end of international terrorism with Pompey the Great taking down all the people that want to bomb Rome. And by the way, Rome is bombed, you know, in 69. You know, those Silesian pirates come in and blow up Austria.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's own 9/11, man.
Yeah.
Every single thing that's happening in this century,
I was
Cicero
just thinking,
replicates. Yeah.
this is really going to resonate with American audiences.
Yeah.
But you know something? Take him out of a toga and put him in Arbani.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's
It's the same deal, man.
Same thing.
Yeah.
so interesting. And you know what? I love that we're talking about America, classical Rome, right? And then also, I think
And somebody says, no, you know what? It can't parallel it.
yeah, no, it absolutely is a parallel. I feel like it's almost undeniable.
That's
And then
a big passion of yours.
it's a huge
Yeah.
passion of mine. And then also, I
You
think
got to get your degree, Andrew.
I do.
Yeah.
I know, I really do. But I also want to bring up RoboCop because I feel like
Oh.
there are some themes in RoboCop that echo even ancient Rome and
Yeah.
echo not and probably America back in the late 80s, but
Yeah.
America more so even now.
Yeah.
You have the militarization of the police state. You
Yeah.
have
Trickle down economics.
corporatization.
You got corporatization.
Yeah.
Privatization of everything.
Yeah.
Privatization of all things. So
It's
that
more
they take it out
relevant
of their
now,
hands.
right?
Absolutely.
It was a little ahead of its time
Oh,
with
I
those
know.
Way
things.
ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Ed Neumeyer and Mike Miner, you got to thank them, but then you got to thank Verhoeven. Listen, it gets me absolutely really weepy, the gratitude that I have to those guys, because I'm doing the movie. I know it's going to be brilliant because it's Paul Verhoeven. I've seen every one of his movies. I've conned my way into doing that part. I've almost begged Verhoeven just to hire me. I never auditioned once for it. I moved around the room. I met him and him and John Davison, and they finally hired me. I had beefs with Verhoeven, you know, on the set. I wasn't quite sure about some of the dialogue. I had beefs with Ed. You know, on the set, and then all of a sudden it just started to fall into line, man. I worked for 6 months on that movie, and then I had to throw the whole thing out. I had beefs with Rob Boutin, who designed that beautiful stuff, and Stefan Dupuis did the makeup. But all in all, when all is said and done, every one of those guys are a genius. From Rob to Stefan to Paul to Mike to that cast. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about Ray Wise or Kurtwood. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Ronnie or Dana Hurley, man. With Nancy, who I see frequently, that everything in it is like, I look at it, you know, it's a tragedy, really, because Miguel Ferrer died, and the guy with the Egyptian and theater said, we're going to have a special screening of RoboCop. Would you introduce it? I said, I'll do it if Ed does it. When Miguel passed away, it was about 10 years ago, and Ed said, okay, I'll do it. He said, "You going to watch it?" I said, "It's a new 4K, reconstituted director's cut of it, at the what's the theater across the street from the Egyptian? That's part of it.
Oh,
The ArcLight.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
So at the ArcLight, I said, "I don't know, man. I don't know." So Ed and I go, and we are introduced it, and then we sit through it. And then I turned to Ed and I said, "I can't watch this movie anymore because it's tragic. It is truly tragic in that the reason why Paul says he took it, I can't speak for Paul's in LA right now, but is because of the center scene is when he goes back and dives into his past and he has visions of it. And it's so upsetting. Okay, it's not upsetting when you're 39 years old and you don't have a family.
Right.
It's not upsetting when Paul Verhoeven says, the most important thing is that when the dreams and so forth. And I'm thinking, like, why isn't that stuff happening before? Robo, it's you. I know you. The Paul McCrane's line, and he says because Peter, it's not amnesia. It's not amnesia. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. It's not amnesia, Peter. It's God. It's a spiritual thing. It's infinite. It's infinity. I said, Paul, what in the fuck are you talking about? And we're in a suite. And Paul, but it's Paul who studied medieval myth and has a degree in this stuff and Christian myth and Egyptian myth.
That's so
Look,
cool.
because I don't forget, I'm the dummy who could talk about contemporary art, but I ain't seen Giotto at this point, man.
Right.
I haven't done
Before.
a dive into all this stuff. Later on, I got to talk till Paul's blue in the face. He wants to go home. But then I'm thinking, what is this? He said, Peter, look, it's the one thing they can't take. The tragedy is that, and he's talking about tragedy, but when you're in the character, I'm not thinking this is tragic. You see the movie 20 years later, it's tragic. He says the one thing they've taken everything, but the most important thing is they've taken your identity. But the most important thing is they've taken your family. They've taken your wife and child, and they've taken your consciousness away from you. But they cannot take your soul.
Yeah.
And your soul wakes up on its own. And so I'm remembering that conversation in my suite. And I tell you, I could cry like that thinking about it. But when I listened to it, I thought it was the weirdest fucking thing. It's like I don't want to really hear about that, in spite of the fact I was sober at the time and I really had no serious spiritual program.
Right.
But to hear Paul talk about it then and talk about it now, and then when you see that the idea of resurrection, which by the way is the theme to that film. I asked people that, I love the film. I asked a kid the other day. He said, "Oh, I grew up with that film." And it was at the World Renaissance Society, and here's this young academic. I grew up with that film. I said, "What's the theme of it?" And it's like great Elia Kazan said, my mentor Uda Hagen says, if you can't say what the theme of a work is in one word, all you're talking about is plot, story, significance, resonance with whatever. That's all important. But what is the damn theme? It's resurrection. It's rebirth. Like all great stories.
Yeah.
It's not war. It's not this. It's not that. It's like the theme of Chinatown. Definitely, and I got to tell Robert Town, thank God, with John Milius when they were smoking a cigar. Thank God I got to tell Robert Town, listen, Chinatown is one of the three greatest pieces of visual rhetoric on America ever made.
Yeah.
Ever made. And because the theme of it is dynasty and incest. Now, people don't want to see that. People want to say, oh, it's power. No, oh, it's water. No, oh, it's land. No, it's not. What's the last thing John Huston does? It take that girl out of that car, say, come with me.
Yeah.
But she's my mother.
Yeah.
I mean, she's my daughter. She's my sister. She's my daughter. She's my sister. She's my daughter. That's the theme of it. That guy, like the Egyptians and everybody else, wants that dynasty. Fuck the valley. That's the plot, man.
Yeah.
So I got to say to Robert Town this, and I said, I was at Bob McKee's story analysis course, and everybody missed it. I'm sitting with Diane Keaton. I'm sitting with other famous actors, my friends. I'm sitting with the entire development team of Paramount Pictures, and Bob McKee's saying, what is the theme of Chinatown? And people are saying power, water, land, blah, 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 blah. And McKee goes, no, it's not. It's the thing you don't want to look at. It's the most horrible thing in the world. It's fucking incest.
Yeah.
It's dynasty.
Yeah.
It's the Ptolemies.
Yeah.
It's the Ptolemies. That's right.
Yeah.
It's the fucking Ptolemies.
Yeah.
And so I get to tell Robert Town. I said, Robert Town, bless his heart, man. Sitting with John Milius, John Milius is a hero to me. And they're both going, yeah. They don't want to see it.
Yeah.
They don't want to see it.
Even when it's right in front of your face.
Especially when it's an alien on your face. Speaking of beautiful stories. Especially when it jumps out of the thing, you know, and blows.
Yeah.
It jumps on your face. No one to do that. So that's the beautiful thing of a RoboCop. It's not about army. It's not about society. It's not about. That's the stories in it, and all those ideas in it about trickle down economics and privatization of this and militarization of whatever, just for power. Yes, like, but it's not about that. That's what people want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And
about
that's what's happening.
It's about rebirth. You know, it's about finding. It's about resurrection, man. It's a theme that goes all the way back to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
And so I ask that all the time. I stand in classes and somebody will ask me about RoboCop. I got to give a thing for the L.A. Breakfast Club. Say, okay, what's the theme of this film? Once in a blue moon, somebody will say rebirth, and I say thank you, and everybody goes, oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of what? Because of metaphysics, not because of any physical world. The beauty part of story is as Casey's husband, who's an extraordinary writer, Dan, the beauty part is that you can encase a metaphysical or spiritual something and bury it in an incredibly entertaining plot arc. You've got lightning in a bottle, man. Because people won't even know why they love it.
Yeah.
And I venture to say, thanks to Paul Verhoeven's imagery that he puts in there, thanks to his drive of it, if you gave that to an average American action director, that movie would not be that movie. In spite of Ed Neumeyer's and Mike Miner's gifts, in spite of whatever us actors lent to it, it would not be that movie without Paul. Without that vision of resurrection driving it.
Yeah.
Right? It would be a nice action movie and funny and kind of cool and about
But
America.
that's like the soul of the movie.
It is the soul of the movie.
Yeah, it's the theme.
And man, I got to watch that again. What's your name, Kid Murphy? What's your name, Kid Murphy? What's your name, Kid Murphy? Rebirth, man.
Wow.
It's right there in front of your face. But no, they want to make it about, it's about ethics.
Yeah.
If you,
beautiful.
it's hard to do it. It's hard to get Cicero out of his fucking dungeon, man.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
It's impossible.
Look, he's 64 years old, and people say his wife has left him, for fuck's sake. His wife is saying, look, you got an ego that is his wife goes and marries Sallust, one of the great historians ever, yeah. And he's got a smart wife. I mean, they're great.
Much younger than he is, though, too, right?
Not that much younger. I mean, maybe like 8 years, something like that. He marries her when she's 23.
That's not that
she's
bad.
like 15 or something like that. But in point of fact, I mean, let's talk about feminists for a second. In the Republic, in spite of the fact that they're not part of the politics, they are indeed part of the advice and the counsel and the wisdom of Rome.
That's their currency.
That's right.
Is
And the
their
currency.
ability to
And by
give
the way,
advice.
they can get a divorce whenever they want.
I know,
Yeah.
They could just go,
so
you know what? I don't dig your
interesting.
jam anymore, man. I'm taking my money and I'm leaving.
Yeah.
I'm out of here. And that's great. That's great. That goes down in the Middle Ages. No one's going anywhere unless
Yep.
Yeah.
the guy saes that. Because the guy's in control. But let's talk about another thing about History for Weirdos.
Yeah.
How weak men are.
Oh,
I know.
I love that. That's the
Yeah,
theme of most episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's so
I mean, but you know
true.
something? I didn't get to learn that until a guy doesn't learn that until he either gets married or
Yeah.
he's 35. And
Absolutely.
And I think it is
I feel like most
because-
men probably don't ever learn that.
no,
Yeah, because
a lot of men don't. A lot of men can admit it. I say to my wife, in case he knows my wife, I'm lost. I tell my wife this. I say this my daily chant. I said, I'm lost without you, baby. And you know what her response is? Yeah, I know.
Yep.
She goes, yeah, I know. I said, a month ago, I said, Sherry, that's a compliment I'm giving you. She goes, no, it's not. It's a fact. A compliment is you like my lipstick or my manicure. So that's a compliment.
Yeah.
You telling me that you're lost without me? That's the way it is.
How long have you two been married?
We've been together for I was literally robbing a cradle when I met her. I was 49. She was 24.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but she's much smarter than me, much better looking, much hipper, a dancer, an athlete, and all this
Oh wow.
stuff.
It's like you're describing our relationship.
Oh
But
yeah.
she's fun. But she's really fun, and she's fun to travel with and fun to be with. You know, I was
That's what
hanging with her a
matters.
long time and traveling with her a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And my oldest friend, who just cannot be around girly girls at all, and my wife was very girly and just very feminine, in spite of the fact she's a jock. But my dearest friend is one of the great antiquarian book dealers. Mark Heim is also the godfather, one of the 3 godfathers of my kid. But he said, "How's your wife?" one day, and I went, "What?" And I never knew to live with anybody, man. I had long relationships, but nobody moved in.
Okay.
I said, "What?" He goes, "Hey, I know she's not your wife, but she should be." And he got up and he left, and he walked out. And some months later, I say this all the time because it was a bardo, what they call in Tibetan Buddhism, a chink in your linear reality.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden an epiphany goes, whoa.
And then you see everything.
You see a light.
Yeah.
And I asked him months later, or actually years later, "Why did you say that and walk out?" He says, "I didn't know I was going to say it." He says, "I have to tell you honestly, I didn't know that was coming out of my mouth. And the second it came out of my mouth, it blew my mind as much as yours. And you know what? And I didn't want to have a conversation.
I didn't want to talk about it.
He didn't want to talk about it because I didn't know what I said. And I said no. Something just said get out.
It
And I
sounds like
said,
it was
"Well,
meant
you
to
left
be."
me. You left me leveled, and you left me with one of the great gifts anybody's ever given me. Which that if you'd not have said that and left, see, if he'd have stayed, I would have had a conversation. It all gone.
You could rationalize it away.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
But
In
you
a
had to
second.
feel it.
You got to feel it.
Yeah.
So, in any case, that said, when one realizes that women, or the female force, or yin, or whatever you want to call it, or the Trojan chicks, or whatever, are more powerful. When I was very young, when I was 23, I was talking to a great guitar player, a studio rock country guitar player, just passed away, bless his heart, who was 15, 16 years older than me. And I was having this time with this girl I had a crush on in New York. And she basically said, "I don't know if I want to be with you." Maybe. And I really want to be with her. And he goes, "Look, Peter," he's the first guy, the second person. Women keep score. More keeping score than you. Because you meet somebody, you have a feeling of whether you want to sleep with her or hang with her or have a romance with her in, the Bahamas, or thunderbolt hits you or whatever, right? But men, especially young men, assume that women aren't keeping that score. That there's sort of like the geisha effect, that they're just along for the ride.
Yeah.
He said, but they're keeping a heavier score than you. And when this girl is saying she doesn't know, she is telling you the truth because she's actually admitting, I'm going to play. And I'm at the front of my own jam here, man. And if I feel like playing, you're the plaything, man. I go, I am? He goes, yeah, but you're not going to see that until you're in your mid-30s. Because you keep thinking that like they're girls. They're not. And don't think of such things. Thanks, Riley. Thanks for that, man. So the only thing I ever saw before that, because I get my stuff from movies and stuff, like I watched a Tennessee Williams movie, which is my favorite play, the first play I ever wrote, called Orpheus Descending.
Okay.
I got to perform for Tennessee twice. My very first performance ever on stage, Sticks and Bones for Tony Ward Vody, which is a black comedy about Ozzie and Harriet, written by David Rabe, won the Tony Award. Father of Lily Rabe has gone on.
Wow.
And married to Jill, a great actress, unmarried woman, and so forth. And I see this movie called Fugitive Kind with Anna Magnani, arguably one of the most dynamic actresses ever in the history of time, and Brando, who, from my money and a lot of people's money, changed the whole game, and there ain't nobody like him. Nobody inventive, physically in a room, nobody, even my wife or her gender goes, okay, the sexiest guy, whenever he weighed 100, no matter if he was overweight or not, the stuff he comes up with in events. Okay, he was asked to do the play with Anna Magnani. He didn't do it. It's the first play Tennessee Williams writes in 1940. It never gets published as a play until 1958 or something like that. Sidney Lumet comes back and does it with Tennessee's original idea of the play with Brando and Anna Magnani as a film. And Brando and Anna Magnani there is no dynamic more powerful than them. This is the most dynamic, powerful, and she's not like the bee's knees good-looking chick, but a force of nature. And Brando is ethereal. And as Kazan said, Brando is a woman walking around in a man suit.
Very magnetic.
But his whole vibe, he said his power, Kazan said it, Kazan is essentially the guy that put him on the map, it's feminine. And I at studio, Kazan, and I'm coming to the actor studio. I asked him one time, what do you mean by that? He says it in his autobiography. He says he says you see this cliche of him in a wife beater screaming Stella. And this is before VHS and all that stuff. You see it again. He's whining. He's screaming like a 2-year-old girl. He's going, he's not going, pumping his biceps. He's got his hands over his ears, and he's whining like, if I may say the cliche, of a little girl screaming at her dad or mom or whatever. And I go, God, man, a guy that powerful physically can allow himself to be that much of what men call a wimp.
Yeah.
Has got a power beyond dreams in him. So I see this movie, and it's Tennessee Williams. And Tennessee Williams is best friends with Gore Vidal. Gore Vidal is going to become my best friend on the Amalfi Coast and convince me to buy my house. And writes my recommendation at a grad school, and he's a guy I could talk about endlessly because I'd never met a smarter guy or a funnier guy in my life than Gore Vidal ever in planet history time. And one of the first guys to admit that he's gay, I'm queer, like had the balls, like Burroughs, like Jean Genet, like Pasolini, like several of them, to go, yeah, I'm queer. Because you guys have marginalized me, and I'm not of your gender, and I'm not of your jam, so fuck you.
Yeah.
And those days you get shot for it. If not, you get shot for it.
Very
now.
dangerous to come out.
Pretty dangerous. Yeah. So Gore is friends with Tennessee, and Tennessee is gay. Tennessee, Dick Cavett tried to be a smarty pants in 1972. Interviewed him and said, "Are you homosexual?" Tennessee, right? He's smoking his cigarette. And you're going like, oh, my God, is that the dumbest fucking thing from some jammed-up Anglican Brit?
Yeah.
To ask the granddaddy of theater poetics.
Of all the things.
Yeah. Are you homosexual? And Tennessee takes a puff off his cigarette. He says, well, baby, let's just say I covered the waterfront.
Oh, my God. Incredible.
Is that a class act?
Oh, my gosh.
I say, you can't have no more poetry than that, man.
I love that.
So when he writes this thing, this dead of night scene about a guitar player, Cajun escapee from New Orleans, who's now down in the bayou somewhere in the Thibodeau, working in a shoe store for an Italian immigrant with a bastard husband who's upstairs. And the dead of night, she wants to know who he is. You got to Google the scene, man.
Yeah.
Look at it. Fugitive Kind, Anna Magnani Brando.
Okay.
I'm paraphrasing this thing, but Tennessee is like gay. And we don't know if he's ever been with a chick, but some of the most dynamic feminine characters ever written based on his mother and his sister, ever written in the theater. Just See Cat on a Hot Tin Roof and shit. And she says to him, Anna Magnani says, Brando, who are you? He says, I'm a bird. I'm a bird with transparent wings. I fly so close to the sun you can't see through them. See through these wings, you can't see me. She says, what do you know? And he says, I know a woman can burn a man down. Man can't burn a woman down. Wow. Yeah.
That's powerful.
Then he says, I can burn a woman down. Right. But he can't because he's a bird. But a man can't burn a woman down. And I asked my friend, a great friend, an academic, Bob Chambers. I remember this. I said, man, let's talk about that. Does that mean heartbreak? Bob, much smarter guy than me, not very vociferous, but says, no, Peter, That's not heartbreak, man. Everybody goes through heartbreak. That goes back to legend. That goes back to the Greeks.
Oh, yeah.
That goes back to why women stop war. That goes back to why, as John Fowles said in the magazine, women see enough sons and husbands die. They stop it. Because they know that the only reason why men create war is to stop women from laughing at us. So I asked my mother that, asked my wife that. Somewhere are you giggling when you see the hot guy? In the back of your jam, are you laughing? And Sherry goes, yeah, of course. It's ridiculous. Love the posing. Love the abs, love the butt, but come on. The whole thing, it's stupid. Do you agree with that? I go, yeah. I asked my mother that. I said, Mother, used to look at those guys on the Amalfi Coast, those boat guys with the hunks. She says, yeah, baby. I said, don't you find that? Do you find that like what Tennessee's saying, like somewhere that's all like lightweight? She goes, yeah, it's all posing.
Yeah, it doesn't hold power.
It doesn't. It doesn't do our thing. Yeah, and I'm thinking, okay, wow, to stop women from laughing at us. And my friend Bobby says, Peter, the original piece of oral tradition literature in the world is the Iliad. What's going on there, man? Why are these guys killing each other for 10 years? Over a chick.
That's true, yeah.
So true.
Yeah, and 3 chicks flying around going, oh, there's an idiot. Let's get him, the shepherd boy, to say which one of us is the coolest. And he doesn't know his ass from his elbow.
Yeah.
Right. I'll give you the most money. I'll give you the most land power. I'll give you the hottest babe. Oh, you're the best.
I know men are so simple.
And you don't think that's
a lot of power.
And you don't think that's about a woman burning a man down. Holy cow.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, 2 nights ago, I'm in a diatribe with a lawyer about something. He's a lawyer for 20th century. His wife is an astute feminist. And I'm talking about this thing, and I got to go up and preach this stuff about history for weirdos, like the history is that women can burn men down. And by the way, the Western world will tell you. And by the way, there's a ton of myths in Asian history to tell you the same thing. That Mother Earth will fly out of the sky and burn your ass,
Oh
in spite of how powerful you think your biceps are.
Yeah.
Right.
And I hear her say to him, she says, yeah, but men go and get guns and kill us. And the husband said, honey, what do you think makes them go get the guns? They're burned down. They got no other recourse except war.
Yeah.
They have no leverage. They have no...
Like, what else?
Yeah,
what else could they
have
do
no
to
leverage
get
for
power?
dialogue. They're done. And I'm thinking, if I remember that, I could sidestep a whole lot of marriage shit. And indeed I have.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because I go like, okay, you know what? That's one of the things I learned. I'm going to win about 12% of this, and that's not one I'm going to win. The color of the kid's bedroom, I'm not going to win that one. No, I'm not going to win that one. No, where this piece of art, I'm not going to, no.
That sounds very wise.
Yeah.
I love
Whether
that.
we have a car on the, you got to pick your battles, man. And most of them, men got to go. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sí, mi amor.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
That's what I
mean,
told him that he
why
needed
is
to
that?
learn how
Why
to say.
that? So speaking of history for weirdos,
Yeah.
why is it that you got to be a weirdo to accept that fact that women own the dynamic?
That is
because I
considered
think
a weirdo
it's
thing.
yeah, that is. I never really thought about it like that.
Guys don't want to admit that.
No, I mean, I think it just gets centuries of certain, I think, passages, stories being pushed down has almost brainwashed us.
Oh, the brainwashing.
I think that's what it
Patriarchal
is.
brainwashing.
Yeah, for like, I mean, for lack of a better term, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so there's this TV show on that I am loath to watch. Adolescence.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, I've
you
heard
seen
about it. I haven't watched it.
The bill in front of the English Parliament that everybody's got to watch it.
Hmm.
Everybody's got to watch it.
Oh,
And the woman spoke out, and the head of parliament 3 days ago, said absolutely. I think we ought to have a bill that everybody watch it.
We
So it's a
should watch it.
four-parter. The four-parter, each one is a oneer, produced by the same guy who stars in it, and it's about a 13-year-old off the internet kills a girl. You know he killed her right away. And you go through the denial aspect of the problem, the psychological thing, familial, the entire jam of the young male dilemma striking back. Or whatever. I ain't seen it. Have you seen it?
I want to.
Yeah. I do too, but I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Because I got a 13-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to my 13-year-old boy about, speaking of History for Weirdos. Okay, he said that's for weirdos. I said, no, Teddy, why is it for weirdos? Because he was hanging out with two girls. One of them he likes a lot.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, you want to give him advice, but I don't.
Yeah.
But he's at this party, and the parents are cool and so forth. I said, I have a problem with this show called Out of Life. He's heard of it. He says, I'm not watching it. I said, yeah. He says, you know, if a girl, I know it's about the kid who's watching the internet, and it's violence against girls. I said, how you doing with girls? He said, I like girls. I like hanging with them. He was giving me a legit response, you know. I'm praying in the back of my head that he's cool with it. Because I'm also going like I got no control over this because when you're a parent and you're a parent, don't you feel like the weirdo? Yeah, like
I can only imagine.
Yeah, because especially kids that age, you're talking to drunks.
Oh,
That 2 and a
toddlers.
4-year-old? No, man.
Yeah.
You think they're going to make sense to you?
Oh, no.
And you're expecting sense?
Yeah.
You know, and her delightful daughters, I know they ain't making no sense, man.
Oh, no way.
And so, at a 13-year-old, they are making sense, but they're not going to make my sense. And I don't know if I want to watch this show, as I don't know if I want to be that upset, because I know I'm going to be upset about it, and I know I'm going to probably do a deep dive in my own accountability as a dad.
Could be interesting to watch with your son.
He doesn't want to see it. You know, he said, I said, do you want to watch it? He goes, I don't want to watch it, and I don't need to watch it. Because I know it is about someone who got disturbed off of watching violence off the internet. I don't watch violence. I said, but you watch violence with games, you know, and World of Warcraft and all that stuff. I said, I don't know if he can make. He says, well, that's the distinction between watching a game and actually acting out on it. And I go, can I repeat you?
Yeah.
That's the distinction between watching the game and actually acting out on it? Because I never had that kind of articulation when I was 13, nor the smarts to make that distinction. I really wanted to blow up shit. No, I really wanted to take M80s and go into this tunnel and blow the hell out of this tunnel.
Oh, that was me.
Yeah, or stick it into the guy, stick it into, like, my next door neighbor, I think his name was Andrew, but stick it in his apples, stick tons of those M80s in his apples, and blow the shit out of his tree. So I didn't have the smarts of my kid, but I don't know about this. But speaking of weirdos, it is truly the history of weirdos being a dad.
Oh, my God, yeah.
I
We're
can
bringing
imagine.
it back to that. I know.
Yeah, I can
I
imagine.
pray that you have a kid.
Thank
And
you.
I pray that you go through the trauma and the joy of having a kid.
Oh, we can imagine.
I know.
Yeah.
Right now, you're making my mother-in-law so happy.
Oh my gosh. Thankfully, she doesn't listen.
She doesn't?
No, my dad does, though. He'll tell her.
Yeah.
My mom is from Mexico. She got pregnant with me at 21. I'm 32. She's so flabbergasted that we don't have a slew of kids already. She's like, what?
Do you have brothers and sisters?
I do.
How
I
many?
do. My brother, I have 2 siblings. My brother is 20. He's a film student right now.
Where?
Emerson.
Oh, what a great school.
Yeah,
Georgia.
yeah. And he...
Emerson's in Georgia? No.
No, Boston.
Boston, right.
And then my sister wants to be an actor, and she's 16. I know.
Okay.
Much younger.
Okay.
They're much younger, yes. So
Okay.
I felt
So
like
just stick with it, man.
I felt like I had kids a little bit already. I
Sure.
helped raise them.
How old your mom?
I don't know. If
Yeah,
I'm
you do.
32, how old is she?
She's like
55?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, around there.
Yeah.
She was young when she had me, and so she really thinks we should have like a ton of kids already.
Yeah.
But I'm like,
But
they're
that's also,
expensive.
see,
Kids are
Sí,
expensive.
esa
Our dog is
mentalidad
expensive.
de Latina.
The Latina,
Sí.
for
Latina.
sure. That's the best thing you could do is have a bunch of kids.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you've got the one kid who wants to be a director and the other kid that wants to be an actor. That means I'm gonna end up taking care of you one day. So I gotta financially plan for
Where
that.
does she live?
They live in Santa Monica. I grew up here.
With your dad?
Yeah.
What does your dad do?
My dad is a manager of a bar called Big Dean's.
Yeah, I know Big Dean's.
You do?
I know where it is. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you're gonna make him so happy.
He's gonna be so happy.
Yeah.
He listens, and my parents started going to Big Dean's when my mom was pregnant with me,
Okay.
and then my dad became the manager.
Big Dean's is a famous bar, man.
It is.
Yeah.
Big Dean's is really famous
Yeah.
because it's been in Santa Monica since like the late
The
1800s.
plague.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The early 1900s, I think.
Yeah. It's been there. I don't know.
Forever.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
So
it's,
I'm local. I grew up here, and I love it. I'm really grateful.
Yeah, that was the go-to place for a lot of us misbehaving.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
know-
back in the day, as I say, back in the day.
Big Dean's, and then another one that's close by that I know a lot of folks. It's like classic too is Shay J's.
Shay J's is also a very well-known joint.
Yeah. They have like the peanut stuff on the
Yeah.
floor. Yeah.
I don't think so anymore, do they?
I don't know.
I thought the
haven't
fire
been in a
law
little
told them to take
while.
that stuff up.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about your parents? Where are they? Enough about me. What about yourself?
Well, my parents, they
Which
live
is-
in Orange County, so that's where I'm from originally.
Me too.
Really? Yeah, Newport Beach. I went to Corona Del Mar.
How about you?
Garden Grove.
Okay.
yeah.
Rancho Alamitos.
Oh wow.
Oh my gosh, wow.
But different than Newport.
But, yeah.
People think I'm from like the ocean.
Okay.
Area,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Like,
No.
Like near Disneyland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
wow.
you go.
Oh, really? You're from? Okay, you guys are real Southern California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, through and through.
Through and
I
through.
mean, I've
I
lived my
mean-
whole life.
Yeah.
Both of us have lived our whole lives
Yeah.
here. I mean, I lived 4 months in Spain when I was studying abroad in
Where?
college. At Pamplona.
Wow.
Yeah, I
In
loved
the
it.
mountains.
Yeah, in the mountains.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
kind of like it was a really interesting area because it's Spain.
Did you see the running?
No, I missed it by like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, say la
I was
vie.
invited to it, and I just have no desire to go.
Now that I'm older, I'm glad I didn't do it. I
You ever
don't.
been to a bullfight in Spain?
No, and I don't want to.
Oh.
You know something? I
We're
have
big
to say-
animal lovers too. so-
Yeah.
I have to say two things. I have to give you. I went to Spain to do a movie by Ernesto Salvador, who was the great Argentinian
Mm.
Oh yeah.
existentialist freedom guy, called El Túnel. Right after I finished RoboCop, RoboCop wasn't out, so I go over to do this movie with Jane Seymour in Spain, and it's at the time that Madrid is still ugly because they're using third world gas and
Mm.
Mhm.
the ecosystem's not up. You know, it's 1986, and I go to finish the movie in Argentina. By this time, I have friends in Madrid who have turned me on to all 6 forms of Sevillanas flamenco and
Wow.
Bolerias flamenco, and I go to flamenco, and then I'm in love with the whole Andalusia
Oh yeah.
jam, and I'm just like done. I want to go back and dig the Festival of Seville. The Festival of Seville is a flamenco festival
Oh, cool.
before a big bullfight. And there's a guy bullfighting there named El Spartaco, Spartacus, who's from latter day. No, but you don't want to see a bullfight, man.
I know.
Because I tell you, it is macho beyond belief.
The poor bull.
And it
minding
is
his business.
diabolically brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's brutal, man. It's brutal, and it's just part of Spanish ethic,
Mm-hmm.
and it's part of Andalusian, Gitano ethic, like flamenco is.
Mm-hmm.
But even the Plaza de Toros in Mexico Ciudad is big place for.
Yeah.
But I tell you, I cannot
I've
ever
never
watch
been
one
to
again.
one.
Never
Yeah.
watch one again.
My mom went to one when she was a teenager, and my mom doesn't even like animals.
No,
And she was
man.
like, I can't ever see that again.
No.
Yeah.
I'm happy I saw one
Yeah.
because it's a thing, but man, I can't do it again. But I did get to the Festival of Sevilla,
Mm-hmm.
and the Flamenco Festival of Sevilla is the nuts, man.
That must be
I
so
mean, it's,
beautiful.
But flamenco
Yeah.
is jazz, and it's North African jazz,
I could
and
see
it's
that, yeah.
and it's their true machismo.
Yeah.
It's not only of the women, but of the men, and the sounds, the dance, the power of it. And it only really starts in Andalusia.
mm-hmm.
at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm not talking about the tourist shit. I'm talking about you go to Cadiz and you see a cat playing and it says, come to me, you come to this bar at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, man,
Oh my
there's like people
gosh.
get up and start dancing and you think, they get hired anywhere.
Oh my God.
And they're dancing, man, and they're just like flying and the guitar player is amazing. You never see him again. No, man, but
That's
that's
amazing.
it's just the power dynamic. And here's what I want to be when I grow up. I'm going to leave you with this.
Okay.
So I go to this festival, and they say, you'll never get a place to stay. You never get a place to stay. The Sevillanas have their own clique, and you can't get in any tents unless you're a Sevillanas. You can't see any of this stuff unless you're a Sevillano. You can't do anything. It's like truly a festival of flamenco that is cerrado.
Okay.
So I go anyway, man. I drive down there. I pull up in front of the Alfonso Tracy, the biggest hotel. I park my car on a sidewalk. I don't care if it's towed. I run in, and there's El Spot Taco going in the people asking an autograph. I got my little Michelin guide thing, right? He signs my thing, right? And I go over to the concierge, and I go, look, I gotta get a room. They go, oh man, Weller, yes, you've sent us 1,000 faxes, man. We got no rooms. I go, listen, I'll pay you cash. I'll pay you anything. And this one guy says, come over here and tell me. He says, we have 4 maids room, this massive hotel, in a basement. It's got one 10-foot high window that looks just right even with the garden. So if you open it up, bumblebees will fly in.
Oh my gosh.
But it's got no air conditioning and no heat. But it's for the maids, but the maids don't stay here anymore. The rest of the things are taken for storage. It's got one cot and a sink, bathroom at the end of the hall. I'll show it to you. I go down, man, it's got a cot half this big.
Uh-huh.
The whole place is about from me to you.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
wow.
But it's got a sink, but this fantastic window. And indeed, I can't open it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing but bees, buzzing out there. I stay in there for 10 days, man. And
Oh
I
my
walk
gosh.
Sevilla, and I bullshit my way into a dinner, a lunch, a couple of tents. I learned the first form of Sevillanas.
Oh my
with the backwards end.
gosh.
I go like, but here's what I want to be when I grow up. Can I just tell you when I want?
Yes, please.
They are the original riding clubs. You got to remember that the Andalusian Mustang, the
Yeah.
horse, was brought to the southern United States, and all the plains horses of the Comanches and forth are the Andalusian
Yes.
Arabs, right?
Yeah.
So these short Arab, they're like quarter horses, but they're Arabs. They got the big nose, right? Okay, so I'm standing on a street corner, man, and you hear flamenco, and then I see this. You can hear the horses, the hooves coming down because they're all shod, right?
Yeah.
On the asphalt, but they're not slipping and sliding.
Okay.
And I look, and there's this guy, and with the black hair, with the eyes, the 4 hours in the gym,
Yeah.
riding the black horse with the spurs that big. I'm from West Texas. I'm a horse dude, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I ain't seen macho like this.
Yeah.
With the black leather everywhere, and one red shirt, right? And that flat sombrero. And on the back is the best looking woman I've ever seen, with the mantilla and the hair up on the head, and they're sitting side saddle with one hand around the guy, man. They don't sit like straddle.
Yeah.
They sit side saddle.
Way harder.
And they've got the boots and the dress and the red and the curls, man, and the whole thing going on with the hair, man. And they got one hand free, like this. And they're just waving and so forth and hanging onto the guy. And the horses are all like this. And they're in groups, like 5, 6, 7. And I'm looking at the horse, best horse I've ever seen. The guys, oh my God. And then the chicks, okay, I give up. I give up. And I see for 10 days, another club. So I finally asked this wrestler, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And they said, but those are the riding clubs of Sevilla.
Wow.
Those are the Andalusian riding clubs. That's our nature. That's as indigenous to us as flamenco.
Yeah.
And dancing, the horse, right? I go, I'm never gonna be it. I want to be that guy, that horse with the spurs.
Like the great tragedy of our lives,
the
right?
chick hanging on. Yeah, man. Anyway,
That's what you want to be when you grow up? That
well,
guy?
when you see it,
Yeah.
when you see it, especially if you come from horses and you come from an idea of macho and motorcycles, and me, and the stuff that goes fast, or race cars and whatever, man. you want to be like. But I've never seen that entity.
Oh no!
And by the way, the
Yeah.
horses are all. They might have one spot, but they're black. They're all black. You don't get a roan. You don't get a paint. You don't get a pinto. You don't get nothing. They're black, man.
Wow.
They want the black horse with the black leather and the red.
Wow.
Right.
What an
I
aesthetic.
know, but listen, the aesthetics of
Yeah.
the makeup of these
Yeah.
women,
Oh,
it's
probably
got to be the
beautiful.
reddest of red lipstick, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like blinding red, fire truck red,
Wow.
man. And manicures all done in red with the silver and the mentine. Yeah, forget it, man. Ain't nobody can compete.
You've
Oh, no
given us a
way.
lot of
So-
things to add to our travel list.
Yeah, seriously.
Next year, our
The
anniversary in
Feria,
Padua.
okay, the Feria Sevilla. It's the flamenco.
Okay.
There's the festival of the Mary and the Cross later on, but go to the flamenco festival.
Yeah. That's going on the list.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and just walk it. I don't care if you just walk it and never go
Yeah.
into a tent.
Okay.
Okay, that's good to know.
Thank you so much.
You bet. My
Thank
pleasure,
you.
Andrew, Stephanie. Pleasure to be with you.
It was
Thank
a
I
you.
pleasure
have a
having
kid. That's all I got to say.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she did get to him.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Peter Weller.
Yes.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Wow, what an incredible episode. I personally love speaking with Dr. Peter Weller, and I know Stephanie did too, and I hope you guys did as well. Please let us know if there is another guest that you really want on the show. Let us know in the comments on Spotify or wherever you are watching and or listening to this podcast. Stay weird.